Okay, good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning for this little intimate affair. It's just me and you and several hundred of our closest friends. This is going to be this is our first virtual workshop, so thank you for joining us. We've done a few in-person workshops, and we appreciate you being here this morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today, what's going to happen is we're going to do this in parts. We're going to do the FAFSA federal aid portion, and Luann will be doing that, and she's going to start in just a moment. Then we'll give you a short break. Then we will start with the Csac portion. So it's sort of broken up into parts. Here's the thing you need to know. We have lots and lots of people standing by to answer your questions. So please ask questions. Today it's actually ask 2 questions, get 1 free. You have to take advantage of the special price. So please ask the questions. Any questions you have, you're going to type those in the Q&A box as we go along. And today we're actually recording this presentation, so it will be available on our website probably sometime later this week. And what else? So we will answer your questions as we go along. Luann, go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you, John, and welcome everyone. So glad you're here. Let me get this. Everybody see it okay?
Looks good.
Thank you very much. Well, my name is Luann Canestro. I have been in financial aid for, 35 plus years. I am representing CASFA and CSFA today. I am going to turn my camera off though, just because I don't have the greatest internet and we don't want to lose anything. So let me do that real quickly. And just as a reminder, there are a lot of good people from CASFA and CSFA that are answering the questions, but put them in the Q&A. Don't put them in the chat, please. Otherwise, they won't get tracked. The presentation today was primarily presented and created by Mark Kantrowitz and David Levy, who are both on the back end of this going to be answering questions. And then the California Financial Aid Administrators, CASFA, which is the California Association, and CSFA, which is the Community College Association. Now, some of you are kind of new to this financial aid, and so this may not make complete sense initially to you. And some of you are veterans, which means you've heard pretty much all of this before, except for some updates and changes. But we will cover what's new, plus some areas that are always cause confusion each year. There is a lot of content. So if I go a little fast, please don't panic. It is recorded and there's more workshops coming up that you'll be able to attend as well. So we're going to take a look at the sources of financial aid today, basic information, really important stuff from the FAFSA. We're not doing a line by line. How to appeal for more financial aid if your family's income has changed. We'll go over a summary of the whole financial aid process and then take a look at some of the sources that your families can use to get some free help. So let's start with the types and sources of aid. We like to break this up into 2 categories, self-help aid and gift aid. The gift aid is the free stuff. That's the stuff that does not have to be repaid, like grants and scholarships. Now, grants are usually based on the student's financial need. Scholarships can be both need or can be based on talent or merit, academic, artistic, maybe athletic talent. But multiple components go into determining scholarships. They're not all the same. Self-help aid is just that, aid that the student would either need to work to earn to receive it, like student employment, federal work study, or something they have to repay, like student or parent loans. The work study programs, if you're not familiar with them, do provide excellent opportunities for students to earn money to help pay for their school expenses. So we always say when applying for financial aid, encourage your students to always check yes to the question on the FAFSA about are they interested in work study. Answering no won't get the student any more grants and scholarships. And if they get awarded work study, they can always turn it down later if they don't need it or can't work. Now, parents and students can borrow from a variety of low interest educational loan programs that are really designed to help them pay the additional educational expenses that the student doesn't get covered with the free aid. We'll talk more about loans in just a minute. Multiple sources of financial aid. students can get it from the federal government as well as the state, as well as colleges and universities. Students can receive funding from one or more, and they should not limit themselves by only applying from one agency. So private agencies, companies, foundations, maybe even the student's parents' employer provides scholarships for colleges. So we encourage you to check with each of them about their application forms and deadlines. So just a couple search websites that we recommend that are legitimate: fastweb.com and bigfuture.collegeboard.org. These are good resources, but I am sure that you high school counselors out there are going to be providing your students with reliable scholarship searches as well. And we always encourage students to check with the colleges that they're applying to for their application deadlines. Sometimes they don't know where they're admitted yet, but they don't want to miss deadlines. So they can apply at multiple colleges, can't receive them all, but they can also definitely get the application in so they don't miss an opportunity for free money. These are the federal programs. So everything we're talking about in this section is federal. So all your questions about state aid, the CADA form, the California Dream Act, save those for later. We're just focusing on federal for this first hour. So these are the current major federal student aid programs and the dollar amounts. The Pell Grant is based on that expected family contribution, which it comes from the FAFSA. It is prorated based on enrollment status. So the amount you see here of $68.95, that is if a student had a 0 EFC and was going full-time. If they're going less than full-time, it's going to be prorated. That lifetime eligibility means a student can receive it for up to 6 equivalent full-time years, or 12 equivalent full-time semesters, or until they get their bachelor's degree. The federal SEOG program, Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, that is awarded by the college. It's considered a campus-based aid because the college receives the money from the feds. They have general guidelines they have to use, but then they have their own awarding. Priority has to go to Pell eligible and the highest need students. The Teach Grant is something that a student may be offered at colleges that offer teaching credential programs. There is a separate application and a teacher service obligation that the student must complete at the college. If approved, the maximum awards, which is adjusted each year based on regulations. So this is the current amount, the $37.28 for the 22-23 year. Now, just as a caveat, if your students get awarded the Teach Grant, if they don't fulfill the service obligation, then the grant actually converts into an unsubsidized student loan. The Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant is for students whose parent or guardian died as a result of military service in Iraq or Afghanistan post 9/11. There are some other criteria, but they do have to be Pell eligible, but they would qualify for the maximum award based on a 0 EFC. Federal Work Study, or FWS, you'll see it in different forms on award letters. Again, it's another campus-based program. Each college is given a limited amount each year to award their students. So they have general guidelines from the feds. And again, they do have a limited pool of money to award. So we always tell students they need to apply early and always check that box that says they're interested in student employment, because some colleges will actually use this to determine who they may award the funding to. So work study is something they're given. They get a job on or off campus, they earn a paycheck, help pay for their expenses. And then the direct student loan program. These are awarded based on grade level, based on the EFC, and other aid being received. There's two major types, the direct loan program, that would be the subsidized loan, and unsubsidized. You'll probably see both of those on a award letter. Subsidized is need-based. It is interest-free while the student's attending college. Interest doesn't start until they start repaying 6 months after they graduate. Unsubsidized starts to accrue interest immediately. These loans change every July 1st for the next year, but they're fixed for the life of the loan. Current rate is 4.99. All right, so let's transition to the essentials of the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. Now, for those of you who are new, We're going to throw a ton of acronyms at you, but we do have an acronym cheat sheet on the Student Aid Commission's website under resources. So you can download that and learn all about the federal acronyms that we're throwing at you today. So that what we get a lot of confusion at the colleges that students says, I didn't get a Fafsa grant. The Fafsa is an application that collects all the financial information as well as the household size and number in college. It's not actually a grant, it's a form. So the students would complete that form on an annual basis. It is definitely free. We do not want families to pay anybody to do this form. There's enough of us in the industry that can help people. And the Student Aid Commission actually will be having workshops coming up as well, I'm sure, for families. That expected family contribution, or what we call EFC, it's a measure of the family's financial strength. And it is calculated using the financial and demographic information on the FAFSA. It is not a dollar amount that the families pay to a college. It is more like an index number. We believe in financial aid world that everyone should complete the FAFSA every year. Some families have a tendency to kind of underestimate eligibility for need-based aid, and vice versa. They overestimate eligibility for merit-based aid. Now, we're going to cover this form later, but there are about 200 colleges, mostly private, that require a supplemental form, the CSS profile, which is through the College Board, and that's to award their own institutional money. It is not for federal or state aid. All right, which application should your students file? Now, a student who is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident is eligible for federal and state student aid, even if their parents are undocumented. So when it comes to completing the FAFSA, undocumented parents are going to use all zeros for their Social Security number. Even if they have a work permit with a work Social Security number, they do not use that. If they are not undocumented, they would put all zeros. Now, we've seen this may generate an error, particularly if they say they filed a tax return. The workaround for that is just to click continue 3 times to bypass the error message. Eligible non-citizens, which would be permanent residents, complete the application exactly the same, but they would enter their permanent resident information or alien register number. Now, a student who is determined AB 540 eligible or does not have a Social Security number or an assigned DACA SSN should apply using the California Dream Act application. Again, we're not going to cover that. It'll be covered later with the Csac folks. DACA and undocumented students are not currently eligible for federal student aid, but may be eligible for state grants. So in California, if they're a California resident and DACA, yes. If they're going to be applying for colleges outside of the state, they would need to check with those colleges and the state agencies to see if they would be eligible if they're not a state resident. Now, all of you who've been around for a while, it was always fafsa.gov. Now the new site, which is one website that the department is trying to get all students to go to when they log in to complete the FAFSA, is studentaid.gov. If they use fafsa.gov, they will be rerouted to this, but all things federal financial aid is under this one umbrella now. And I don't know, some of you have been around for a little bit. Remember that My Student Aid app that came out a few years ago? Well, it has been decommissioned. It was retired on June 30th for low usage. People just weren't using it. The online FAFSA at studentaid.gov, though, does have a responsive interface. So that will adapt to the size of the computer screen, whether it's a desktop monitor, a tablet, or a smartphone. Now, students who file the FAFSA early are more likely to receive institutional aid versus student who apply late. Remember, SEOG and work study are limited dollars. So there's some funding that institutional money that first come, first serve. So we encourage students to apply as early as possible. The application opens every year, October 1st. They should bookmark that studentaid.gov, and then after October 1 of their senior year, complete that form each year. They also want to check the college's website so they don't miss any other priority application deadlines. Now, most state schools do have March 2nd as kind of their priority, but don't assume. If colleges are impacted, they might have an earlier date. So encourage your students to check their websites as well. March 2nd is the Cal Grant deadline for California residents. So we definitely want them to complete it by that date so they don't miss out on any Cal Grant eligible programs. Now, the Fsa Id, for those of you who have done workshops, will know that this probably takes more time to complete than the actual FAFSA application. It is a digital signature that the student and one parent will each need to have, and they need to create their own. This is theirs for life. They do it once, and it goes with them the rest of their life. They should also save these IDs and that password they create somewhere where they can find it. We regularly see students forget their password and then try too many times and get locked out. We hate to see that happen, so have them save it somewhere. Now, we recommend that the Fsa Id is created first before beginning the FAFSA. Then all of the demographic information that they've created that ID with will populate on the FAFSA so they don't have to enter it twice. The security questions are selected from a drop-down box, and we suggest that they should be things that don't change but can be easily remembered. Don't use your favorite color, your favorite TV show, favorite food, because we know these will all change over time. We also don't recommend using PII, that personal and identifiable information, like high school name or the city where they were born, because there's so much fraud out there now. The Fsa Id users will be able to log in with a verified mobile phone number as an alternative to their username. They must first register their mobile number on the Fsa Id website if they have not already done so. And just a reminder too, that if the student uses a email address with a top level domain like .edu, .k12, .pvt, or .tec, or .cc, they're going to get a little warning message that they should use an email address to which they will not lose access, as some of these domains are going to associated with high schools or community colleges. So after they leave those schools, they may not be able to access those email addresses anymore. So students should all have a personal email address created as well. We do see some common mistakes with parents who try to create them for their students, or vice versa. Students create it for their parents. They start swapping social security numbers. They swap date of births. That is why the Department of Education strongly recommends that parents create their own and students create their own. Now, we understand that some parents don't have computer skills, may not have the language skills, but if they're eligible because they have a social security number to create an ID, student can help them, but please have the parents select their own information so that the following year, when students reapply, they don't run into the problem that we see so often, that either the parent or the student can't remember because somebody else created it for them. All right, there are still 7 sections to the FAFSA. That hasn't changed. Today, we're going to take a quick look at the school selection section. Then we're going to focus on the trickiest sections of the form that's used to determine a student's dependency status, and then whose parent goes on the application, the information. There are a few changes for 23-24. One is the removal of male or female question, removal of the register for selective service question, hey, and removal of the drug conviction question. And at the very end, there is a new demographic survey that asks about gender, race, and ethnicity. The department is trying to do some data analysis by collecting this information. Okay, so students can select up to 10 colleges initially on their first application that they want their financial information to go to. Once the student receives confirmation that the FAFSA was processed, they can log back into the site if they want to add more colleges. They first have to remove 1 or 2 or however many, and then add the new schools, save it, sign it, and submit it, and then the new colleges will get the financial information. So there are a few tips that you can give your students. First college from California on the list. So it doesn't matter what order it is, it's the first California college. That's the one that Csac is going to use to determine their Cal Grant award if they're eligible. Now, the Student Aid Commission does require a student to confirm their college of attendance after they receive the FAFSA results and after a processed Cal Grant eligibility is determined. So colleges do not need to be listed in any particular order, and the colleges that receive this information do not see the other colleges that are listed. Another tip is if they know that their college they're applying to has early decision or early access or priority processing deadlines, make sure that they list those in the first grouping, the first 10. Now, another change, if parents manually enter their financial information, later make some changes or even change a household, make any changes at all, the 10 colleges that are currently shown on the application are going to receive these changes. The schools that they removed will not. So same thing, submit it to these first 10. And if they still don't know where they're going to school, they would have to then wait till they're processed, go back onto the site, remove some schools and add some other schools, sign, submit, and save it, and off it goes. Now, the first few questions used to determine a dependency status involve the age of the student and their marital status. But this information comes from Section 1 of the student demographics. So for the 23-24 aid year, a student born before January 1st, 2000 is considered independent by age alone. Now, also students, if they're married as of the date they're filing their FAFSA, are also considered independent, regardless of the other questions. Now, assuming most of your high school students will not meet either of these criteria, then we come to the questions on the screen regarding whether the student has dependents on their own. Now, if you're looking closely, you'll see July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 23. That is the current application. The department has not given us screenshots yet of the FAFSA on the web. So your students will see July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024. So does the student have dependents? Answering yes to this question means that they are providing more than 50% of that child's support now and will continue throughout the academic year, 23 to 24. So an unborn child that will be born during that academic year can also be included as long as that student is going to provide 50% or more of their financial support. Now, sources other than the student's parents, like CalWORKs, support from a boyfriend or girlfriend, that would be considered part of that 50%. Parent support is not. Now, for most high school graduates, they will probably answer no to the questions regarding other dependents, but if they do, just encourage them to know that with documentation may be required if they're 18 years old and saying they're providing more than half of the support. Now, the next set of questions, most high school seniors were going to mark none of the above because normally someone is not a veteran, not in active duty if they're in high school. So these are pretty basic right here. We're going to go over the trickier ones on the next couple slides. So let's take a look at those. Foster youth. Now, a student who is an orphan in foster care or a ward of the court at any point after reaching age 13 is considered independent. Now, even if that student has been adopted or is no longer in foster care when they file the FAFSA, a student who is adopted prior to reaching 13 is not considered to be an orphan on the FAFSA. So again, at any time until they turn 13, were they in foster care, regardless of their current situation, then they would check yes, and they would then be considered independent. Now, the financial aid administrator at the college or university they're applying to, we say may be required. I bet you most colleges are going to require proof of their status. Emancipated minor. Students who answer yes if they can provide a copy of the court's decision that as of today, the day they're doing their FAFSA, they are an emancipated minor. Now, emancipation as part of a divorce decree to indicate the end of child support obligations when the student reaches that age of majority doesn't make a student an emancipated minor. They can only answer yes to this if they can provide a copy of a court's decision that they were emancipated minor before they reached the age of being an adult in their state. So if we're talking about California students, California residents, it's 18 and has to be a California court. Students should answer no if they are still a minor and the court decision is no longer in effect, or that court decision was not in effect at the time the student turned 18. And again, but most likely the financial aid office is going to require some documentation. But as my colleague Dennis says, he's been around for a long time too, and he has never seen an emancipated minor come across his desk. So there's not a lot of this out there. Legal guardianship. This one is one of the trickiest ones. So the definition of legal guardianship does not include the student's parents, even if they were appointed by a court to be the student's legal guardians. And students also cannot consider themselves legal guardians over themselves. The students have to have this done by the court. The court has to be located in the state of residence, therefore California court. And the student must have the documentation. Now, if the student parents may be out of the countries, which is what we see, and then they've had an attorney drop some papers so that their grandma or their auntie or their older sibling has some legal rights over their health care and their education decisions, that is not the same. That is not considered legal guardianship for federal financial aid purposes. That would be legal custody, perhaps, but it has to come from a court. The legal guardianship does not terminate the rights of a parent, including custody. It suspends the rights. So it allows the legal guardian the right to act on behalf of the child under the guardianship. So no, that's the big difference right there, is a court ordered versus an attorney ordered. And if the parents still have a relationship with the student, they're just not in the state anymore, maybe they're out of the country, they would still complete the FAFSA as a dependent student, with the parents providing their financial information as well. Students can be considered homeless, unaccompanied youth if at any time on or after July 1st, 2022, they are either a homeless, unaccompanied youth or unaccompanied, self-supporting, and at risk of homelessness. So this definition you're seeing right here is straight off of the FAFSA. So it's lacking fixed, regular, adequate housing. And that could include student living in shelters or parks or motels or hotels, public spaces, campgrounds, cars, abandoned buildings, or they're temporarily living with other people because they have nowhere else to go. And this includes the students who are couch surfing. Unaccompanied means the student is not living in the physical custody of their parent or guardian. So they would be on their own. If the student and the parent are together sleeping in a car, they're not considered unaccompanied. And youth means that the student is under 24 years of age. So most of your schools or districts have a homeless liaison, and documentation, a letter from that person would be sufficient supporting information to give to the financial aid office to verify their homeless status. But if you are new to this and you need more information, I encourage you to go out to the National Association for Education of Homeless Children and Youth website, because there's a lot of good resources, and they have a form that may help verify a student's homeless status. So if a student is truly homeless, then you would check yes to that, and they would be considered independent. Now, some of you have been around for quite a while and you've seen these slides, so this is going to be a review, but just so that those of you know, majority of the students coming out of high school, we're going to assume they're dependent, right? And oftentimes there's a lot of questions about which is my parent, which parent do I put on the information if there's only one parent in the household or something else. This reference sheet covers about 99% of all possible combinations of parents. So let's start with, who is my parent? Now, it means a legal, which is biological or adoptive. So that is the first thing you think of when you think of a parent. So are your parents married to each other? The answer is yes. Pretty straightforward. Come on. Then both information goes on the FAFSA. If they're not married to each other, the next series of questions would be, do their parents live together? If the answer is yes, they still provide both of the financial information. Doesn't matter what their marital status is or if they filed separate. If they are both biological parents living together in the same household, then they provide both of the financial information on the FAFSA. If they don't live together, now the question the student asks is, did I live with one parent more over the last 12 months? So if the answer is yes, that's the custodial parent for the FAFSA information. But as we all know, I go to do workshops a lot. There's always the parents that are together saying, oh no, we have 50-50 custody. Well, if that's the case, the next question would be, which parent provided more financial support over the last 12 months or in the last year that the student received report? So if there is one parent that provides more financial, that is the one for FAFSA purposes. Now, did the parent remarry? No. One custodial parent, one financial set of information. If they remarried, then the step parent does have to provide their information as well. Premarital agreements do not mean anything to the federal government when it comes to completing the FAFSA. These people, unless they have legally adopted your student, is not considered a parent. So a grandparent could have raised that child since they were a baby, but unless they adopted them, they're not the legal parent for FAFSA. So again, got to pay attention to that because we have seen students list their grandparents' information and then have to go back and change it. Now, the IRS data retrieval tool, which we call the DRT, another acronym for you, we encourage all families who are eligible to use it to do so because it does provide the most accurate way to enter the tax information onto the FAFSAs. Now, again, the parents who don't have a valid Social Security number are not able to create an FSA ID, and they are not able to use the IRS data retrieval tool. If students use this, though, and parents, they are less likely to be selected for verification and have to submit their tax documents. This is one less step the student has to complete in order to receive aid. Not everyone can use it, though. There are a few examples of those who are unable to use the DRT. There is a comprehensive list on the department's website, but just to be aware, if the student has or parent's been a victim of identity theft, if the marital status has changed since the time they filed, if the parents are unmarried, but both financial information is provided, you have to add the two tax returns together. IRS isn't smart enough to grab them both and do it for you. But just also what happens when they use the DRT is they get linked to the IRS website. So they leave the FAFSA website, they get a little message. The information is encrypted when they transfer the data over. And so they won't be actually be able to see the information that populates on the FAFSA. Only the colleges can see that. But they will see a message that says transferred from IRS to know that the process is complete. And then the parent is taken back to the actual FAFSA application. Now, if they have problems accessing the DRT, the parents can use their tax return and enter online. We see this in workshops a lot where there seems to be no reason why that parent can't use it. And it could just be a traffic issue. There's too many people trying to use the site. So if you want to get those applications done while they're in front of you, you're going to have to do it manually. Otherwise, the parents or family can wait and try logging back in again when it's not so crowded on the World Wide Web. All right, which information? So when we're doing the FAFSA, the assets section is as the date that it's filed. So assets, cash saving, checking, CDs, money market, stocks and bonds, that's the date, how much is the value at that point you're doing the FAFSA. Now, for income, on the other hand, it started back in 2017-18. Income's reported based on what we call the second previous tax year or prior. So for the 23-24 year, your families are going to use tax returns from 2021 because by October 1st, most of them have already filed their return. And so it should be able to import their information straight from the IRS. Now, there are people who have not filed. I just ran into a friend a couple weekends ago. Her daughter's going to community college and they didn't file their 21 taxes because they owed money. So she was scrambling to get her taxes done, pay the IRS so that she could then complete the FAFSA for her child. So sometimes people don't do it for reasons, but the federal government doesn't want to give students federal financial aid unless the families pay their federal tax obligations. If the families have their 2022 in front of them, do not use that. Do not substitute it. Even if it's lower, they have to use the year specified each year on the FAFSA form. Now, if the family's income is decreased, they should be contacting the financial aid office to ask about how to appeal for more financial aid. We'll talk more about that. Parent signature. This always is a challenge for some with the parents who may not be in the country. They can't create an ID. There is a way for them to sign the form. There is a place on the application where they can print out a paper copy. The department does need a hard copy of the signature mailed to them. They do not accept digital copies. Now, the address is listed on the printed page where they can mail that form. We always encourage them to keep copies just because we like keeping copies in financial aid. It's always good records to do that. There are instances when the signature page is rejected. So the parents really need to read the instructions carefully and then follow them. So if it's incomplete or they've left something off, the department will reject that. And the school will not receive a valid student aid report that shows that EFC on it. So it's important that they do this early. Do not wait till the last minute to complete and mail that signature page. So this is where you will find the option to print the PDF, and then they can sign and mail it to the address on the form. Now, after the student submits the FAFSA, they should see this confirmation page that congratulates them. We always encourage them to either print a copy or save it as a PDF because it has a date stamp on it of when and what time it was actually submitted to the department. In addition to that, it also shows the EFC. It will also show the estimated federal Pell amount and federal student loans as well. The college that are listed on it that they've selected will also have more information about them, like graduation rates and default rates. And so there's it's got a lot of good info on it. Now, each time a student makes a correction online on their FAFSA, they're going to see a new confirmation page, and that will be available, which reflects the changes they've made. Now, if the student has a sibling attending college, the parent can transfer their information to the other child's application by clicking the transfer button. So that's right here. I've circled it in red. Now, they do have to do this while this confirmation page is up. Once they close this window, you can't get back to it. Now, there are some errors that we see on a regular basis. Again, confusing the parent with the student. Whenever you see the word IU, that is the student and not the parent, even though the parents are doing the form for their children. Social Security cards, that's what they showed the legal name. So we don't want students using a middle name or a nickname instead of their first name. They need to really double check that date of birth to make sure they're not swapping month and year. So that's accurate as well. The other thing we see is when including cents when reporting dollar amounts, it actually does round it up to the nearest $100. We also see that students and families have challenges reporting, assets sometimes. Qualified retirement accounts, the 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, Roth IRAs, SEPs, Simples, KIOs, and pension plans, those are not reported as an asset on the FAFSA, okay? Contributions they put in would be untaxed income, but it is not an asset for the FAFSA. The other thing is also not the net worth of their primary resident, and that primary resident is one the family owns and lives in. If they own other properties, rental properties, then the value, the net worth at the moment they're doing the FAFSA, that would be considered an asset. So that's another thing we see. The 529 accounts, Those are the education plans for students. Now, if it's owned by the parent, if they're the student's the beneficiary, but the parent owned it, they're the custodian of that, then it is the parent's asset. And if they have more than one child and multiple 529s, they all get added as the parent's asset. If the grandparents open the 529, they own the account, it is not reported on the Fafsa. And again, a lot of these errors can be avoided if they use the IRS data retrieval tool to transfer income information. Because, like, for example, income tax paid, we see students all the time taking it off of their W-2. Well, that's withholding, that's not paid. So that number can be skewed a lot of times. So they need to make sure they use the correct line on the FAFSA, on their tax return that is specified on the FAFSA if they're manually entering it. And just a caveat, one of the things that we've also seen questions about is that save key. This is created near the start of the FAFSA when they create their Fsa Id. It is not their digital signature. It is used just temporarily while they're completing this application before they submit it. By creating that little 4-digit code, if they stop any point, save their application, come back later, they use the save key and it'll put them right back where they left off. Once they submit the form, then that save key is no longer needed. It's not used anymore. And if they did forget their save key, they can select the I forgot my save key link and provide the requested information to access their FAFSA form. Now, the student will receive a student aid report, or SAR. We call them SARs in our world, so that's another acronym for you. It's an acknowledgement, and they usually get it, if they do it online, they do it with an valid email address, they can get it within a couple days. If they don't provide a valid email, or they do a paper, it can take a couple weeks. Now, if the student does not receive this, because this is the confirmation that it's got all the financial, all the colleges that are listed, verification of all this, if the student doesn't receive this within 2 weeks, the email that links it to them, check their junk mail too, by the way, they should contact the federal processor. Either can call them or they can log on to studentaid.gov to make sure it's actually got done, because they don't want to miss out again on financial aid if there's some early filing deadlines. Student can make corrections once the student aid report is processed. So again, if the student's applying for more colleges, as soon as they get this link that says, oh, your student aid report's ready, they know they can go back onto the studentaid.gov website and add more colleges to their application to receive this information. Students should make sure that they keep a copy of this SAR with the rest of their financial aid documents. Some private scholarship agencies may require a copy of it as part of their application process. Now, I mentioned earlier the CSS profile form. What is this form? Some of the private colleges, and I think one, maybe UCSF, require students to complete this form to determine institutional aid. Now, not all private colleges require it, so you need to either check the College Board's website or go to the college itself and look at their financial aid page, see if it's needed. You don't want to complete this form if it's not needed, because it does cost the student $25 to register and for one college, and then $16 for additional colleges. But like in California, Occidental College, Caltech, Stanford, University of Southern California, Santa Clara, all the Claremont colleges, they require this form. Outside of California, you'll see more of the higher end Ivy League schools requiring it. But again, don't complete the form if it's not necessary. The big difference between the information that's being requested is they can ask for the home value, the primary resident value at the time that they complete the FAFSA. They can ask for income and assets from the non-custodial parent, and they can also ask for the value of retirement plans. This form is not used to determine federal or state aid. The student will still need to do a FAFSA form. However, they use this form for their own money, so they can actually customize and ask whatever questions they want. There are fee waivers available for students who use the SAT fee waiver, whose parental income is $100,000 or less, or when the student is an orphan, a ward of the court under 24 years of age. All right, now let's take a look at how students can appeal their financial aid. There are a variety of special circumstances that you hear from students when they can't figure out how to answer the question on the FAFSA, or when their current living situation, financial situation has changed or is not typical. And they can be significant changes to income. It could even be about selective service eligibility or dependency as well. The financial aid officers or administrators, they have the authority to make certain adjustments based on this information that's presented to them by the family. So if there's something going on, then students can talk to the financial aid office. It's called professional judgment, and the financial aid office only, no other office on campus, can gather information and then make some changes to the FAFSA themselves. So encourage your students, if there's a change, to contact the financial aid office. So let's take a closer look at the big ones, which obviously is a reduction of income, particularly in the last several years. So the student completes the FAFSA, the parent with their 2021 income, but what if they have become unemployed or they've had their hours reduced because of furlough or COVID? Let's keep throwing that out there because a lot of incomes have changed, assets have changed. There's a term on the FAFSA, are you a dislocated worker? That is somebody who's lost their job or been laid off or received a layoff notice. They're receiving unemployment benefits due to being laid off, and they're not likely to return to their previous occupation. Now, other examples could be change in marital status. Maybe when they did the FAFSA, the parents were married and now they're separated or divorced in the middle of the year. Out of pocket medical expenses. Perhaps everything is so high right now. If they have a family member that has really high medical that they have to pay cash out of, then that might be a reason for an income adjustment as well, particularly, again, these last couple years. Professional judgment can be only used by the financial aid office again, but it can be used to override dependency status. So if a student answers all the questions on the FAFSA and it says they're dependent, but there's some unusual circumstances like an abusive family environment, or they were abandoned by their parents and given to grandma and grandpa to raise, they can't find their parents. If there's some reason that they can't, or it's not safe for them to contact their parents, they should appeal for a dependency override with their college. All of these appeals do have to go to each college. One college can't make the determination for all schools that the student's applying to. So there's usually a form on the school's website, and that usually makes suggestions on what you should submit. They should also, if you've got a letter that you know the situation, then you can provide that. Mostly colleges will ask for 2 letters of support confirming the student's situation. There needs to be third-party professionals. We don't normally accept them from family members, but again, if nobody knows what's going on but family members, then they can submit that. But again, each college handles this a little bit differently. The student cannot just say, I am independent, I don't know where my parents are. They've got to do some sort of a letter from persons that, like maybe even if there's a police report that they can submit or court document. But the big one is if your students cannot access their parents, unable to, they need to talk to the financial aid office of the college they're most likely to go to and get that process going. This is kind of just another overview of that, but traditionally, if it's financial need and then it's dependency, but the documentation needs to be submitted to the school. Now, not every college does it the same time of the year. So again, you've got to ask and find out. I worked with a student at a community college who transferred to a UC, and they weren't going to review those until January. So the first semester of their freshman year, they were stuck with just student loans because nobody would look at their appeal. I don't know what all the schools are doing now. You've got to check with each individual college to determine what form, what documentation, and when they will do them. Now, Mark Kantrowitz, who is also behind the scenes answering questions today, he wrote a best-selling book about how to appeal for more financial aid for college. His website, which is kantrowitz.com/books/appeal, includes a free downloadable tip sheet that reveals the basics about how to appeal for more financial aid. So I would encourage you, if you've never talked to families and need some guidance, get that document for yourself. All right, quickly, let's go over the whole process. Now, start with the Fsa Id. You review which colleges you're going to go to. Make sure you meet those deadlines. Get those first 10 colleges listed. We always tell students, at my workshops anyway, I say, get that FAFSA done before the end of the year, the calendar year. That way, when they come back in January, last semester of their senior year, they can focus on all the other activities that are happening and not worry about getting this FAFSA done. They should gather all the documents they need and make sure that they submit everything that they need. If the parent has to do and print and mail the signature, make sure they do that early enough so they're not doing it at the end of the summer. You want them to do it early. Save that confirmation page, save that student aid report. And if they have to add more colleges, go and delete some and add some more. Do not wait till the very end. Students can do this FAFSA before they are aware of where they've been admitted. The two don't have to run side by side. We also say they've got to review all of the information that the college sends them, whether it's email or whether it's a link to their portal, because once they're admitted, they're going to get access to the student portal on the school's website. That'll tell them any documents that's outstanding, what they need to submit. So if they're selected for verification, they're going to be asked to turn stuff in. They don't want to wait till August to do this. They want to do it earlier. So make sure you encourage your students to check the websites as well. Some things have to be accepted as well. So if you're going onto the portal and there's an award letter, you either have to accept or reject. So students need to check their emails, and I know they don't, but we keep trying to beat that into their heads. Please check your emails and check the school portals frequently. Each year they do have to reapply, and so they need to make sure they understand the deadlines as well. And we can't stress enough to ask questions. If they get something in the mail, if the school is still sending paper letters or they get an email, ask questions. Ask the college. They've all got emails and chats now. Ask your high school counselors. We're all here happy to help them, but don't not do something because they don't understand it. Now, there's also a student responsibility to all of this. We want to emphasize this because we're getting really good now at having students complete their FAFSA or their California Dream Act, and particularly this new year when they need to complete that to graduate from public high schools. But more about that from their Csac friends. They're going to receive an email and a link to their student aid report. They got to review this to make sure that all the colleges are listed on it, that they want this information to go to, and then they could add more if they need to. The college then downloads this, evaluates their eligibility and their need. And then if the student is selected for verification or there's some discrepant information, they may request additional information. The student have got to check their email and their portal and submit everything they need to in a timely manner. Do not wait till the end of the summer. Another reason for completing everything early is most colleges will not review special or unusual circumstance requests until their file's complete. So make sure that they're complete and they get admitted. Literally, if the file's incomplete, there's no money. And coming from a community college, I see students all the time coming in the first day of class saying, I need money for books. And then we look them up and they haven't turned in their documents. So then they turn their documents in. It's going to be several more weeks before we pay them. So make sure that you encourage your students to check their emails often. All right, there are sources of free help. Again, we don't want families thinking they have to pay people to help them. So if you haven't checked out the Department of Ed's Financial Aid Toolkit website, I encourage you to do so. It provides a lot of good information on how to host an event, make a presentation. And I have to say their social media stuff is pretty good. They've got videos on how to create an Fsa Id, how to complete a FAFSA, things about tax returns. So use those, link to them, put, on your websites. They have some good dates and timelines and things, but take advantage of what's already created so you don't have to recreate the wheel. And then the department also has, Federal Student Assistance has Q&A document that you can download as well. And they also still have the same 800 number, 433-3243, which is 1-800-4FED-AID, that you can contact. And they also have a live chat and an email as well. Now, the Federal Student Aid Information Call Center is usually between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. Saturday hours are reduced, so you need to check their website to see what those hours might be. Okay, 2425. You're probably all on here wanting to know what's coming. I'm going to breeze through to some changes that are coming next year, but we're going to have a document on the resource page that will outline them. So you're not going to be able to catch them all right now. But the biggie is the number of questions is going from 108 to 36. The new form is going to be better aligned with the federal income tax return, which will allow more information to be transferred from the IRS. The EFC is not going to be the EFC anymore. It's going to be renamed to the SAI, the Student Aid Index. Financial aid for single parents should increase. Number of children in college is no longer going to affect the aid eligibility. The small business exclusion, which is under 100 employees, and the exclusion for family farms is going to be eliminated. And the cash support question, that untaxed income to student, is going to be eliminated as well. And assets are disregarded for family incomes that are $60,000 or less. And there will be some expanded federal Pell Grant eligibility. So be sure you watch your emails and sign up for the 2425. And hopefully we'll have some other workshops in the spring or summer for counselors once we get more information from the department and samples of this form. And that is the federal update and FAFSA in a nutshell. I see there's been some Q&As out there. Has everybody got their questions answered? Somebody wants to unmute and let me know if we're good there.
We are working on answering the questions. We've done a pretty good job. We've answered about almost 100 questions. So
okay,
we will continue to answer questions for as long as people are asking them.
Thank you. And we will stay on even after the break and after the Student Aid Commission starts their session. But we really hope this has found this information useful. We thank you for helping your students. And the copy of the presentation and more resources are on Csac's website. If you did not get the PowerPoint, it will be there available. And then I don't know if it's the resource page, maybe someone from Csac can put that link in the chat, so that people can get to the acronym worksheet and the 2425 changes to the FAFSA. That would be wonderful.
We can do that.
All right, let me unshare.
Okay, so everybody, we're going to take a quick break, just a really quick, about 5-minute break. Luann, thank you so much for assisting today. You did a fantastic job as always. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back about 9:35, 9:36, and at that point we will start with the Csac presentation and also bring you some important information from CCGI, which you'll see shortly after we start. So take a break, do your thing. I don't know, 20 push-ups, bake some muffins, change your oil, whatever you can do in 5 or 6 minutes. Go ahead and do that. And we will see you in just a moment. Okay, thank you. Thank you for hanging out for that FAFSA presentation. Yeah, there's a lot going on, especially next year with the FAFSA. So that was good information. So thank you to Luann for presenting, and to everyone for answering the gazillion questions that we had and continue to answer. So we're going to jump into the Csac part of the presentation. My name is John Waldrop. I am part of the outreach and training team at the California Student Aid Commission. I am here with, I think, virtually all of my colleagues, my partners in crime in that unit. They're going to stand by and answer your questions as well as we go through this portion of the training. Now, you're going to get a survey at some point, and what you're probably going to say on the survey is, man, that's a lot of information in a really short time. And you're right, it is. It's a ton of information that we are giving to you very quickly in a very short time period. So it's kind of hard to get around that, unfortunately. The good news is we're going to record this session today, and it will be up on our website probably early next week at the latest, maybe by the end of this week. We have other virtual workshops that we're going to be doing over the next several weeks. We have in-person events if you want to double down and say, yeah, virtual is fun, but I want to see these guys in person. So lots of options for you. All right, so we're going to go ahead. I just want to make sure that you guys, the attendees, can hear me okay. So if you wouldn't mind, if someone would type in the chat, John, we hear you, and you sound great. 2 thumbs up. All right, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm going to lose the video here so it we don't use too much bandwidth. So let me stop that, and then let's get going. So welcome to the 22-23 statewide financial aid workshops. For those of you who have been around a long time, you'll remember when these used to be called the high school counselor workshops. And then we realized, you know, we're certainly serving a much larger audience than just high school counselors. So we have a lot of partners here. Anyone basically who works with you know, students and they're trying to help them with financial aid and getting into college, you're in the right place. So welcome. So here's our agenda for today. I'm glad we didn't have a number 9 because I don't think we could have squeezed that on there. So welcome again. Number 1, check, that's out of the way. We're going to have someone come on from the California College Guidance Initiative, which is a really cool process. And one of the things that will really help you with the application process. So number 1, it will help you in filling out the Fafsa and California Dream Act applications. More importantly, they're going to offer a lot of different tools around that. And they're going to tell you how it makes it easier to track those applications if you go in through their platform. We're going to go all in for Fafsa and California Dream Act. So this is about the new legislation that requires high schools to ensure that an application is being done, a financial aid application. We're going to talk about that and give you some suggestions, some best practices, some other things that we can help you with. We're going to give you updates about new programs and changes to programs. We're going to talk about our regular Csac programs, web grants, etc. High schools doing your part. We're going to talk about how high schools can best collaborate with Csac. We will talk about the California Dream Act application, sometimes referred to as CADA or CADA, depending. It doesn't matter. You can call it whatever you like. And then finally, we're going to leave you with some resources and some contact information. Again, please continue to ask your questions. We have a lot of people standing by, and we can answer the questions. We've kind of gone through the FAFSA parts, and it looks like we've answered the majority of the FAFSA related questions. So we have a team standing by who can certainly answer questions about this part of the presentation. I do want to take a second and thank our partners at CASFA and CISFA. They are instrumental in putting together the FAFSA PowerPoint, in finding people who can present the FAFSA presentation. This year, we're doing nearly 70 workshops, which is crazy. When I started, I think we were doing 17, and now we're, you know, into the 60s. So we need to find people who can present both the FAFSA portion and obviously the presenters from Csac. So they're really heavily involved in that. These are 2 really interesting organizations. If you want more information, check out their websites. Now, this year, we've been super aggressive about partnering with sponsors, with these agencies and these organizations and these entities who have resources to help you. In the new legislation, AB 469, which is the legislation, like I said previously, that requires high schools to ensure that their students are filling out a financial aid application. One of the things that it states very clearly is, hey, you can partner with outside organizations to help you. And there's a lot of different ways that these organizations can help you. So my very strong suggestion is to look up these organizations, go on their websites. We sent you a link that hopefully you got that lists all the different things that we're talking about today and the links to all the websites. So check out these organizations. They are all standing by and ready to assist you. It's good to ask for help when you need help. And these organizations, they offer resources. A lot of them are very hands-on, and they offer different kinds of resources, both for students and for you and for parents. So please, we highly recommend that you talk to them. Oftentimes they can, there's a lot of virtual materials, and sometimes they can send you printed materials as well. So we suggest that you do that, and check out all the different sponsors that we have this year. Okay, so we are going to transition into the CCGI portion. And you guys, are you going to want to share your screen? Is that easier?
Yes.
Okay. So let me, okay, I think we're good. Okay, so go ahead and introduce yourself and take it away.
Thanks, John. Good morning, everyone. We really appreciate our colleagues at Csac for including us in this presentation, and we're super excited to share with you all some tools designed, among other things, to support district-wide implementation of All-In for Fafsa and the California Dream Act. My name is Joanna Vasquez-Zelaya, and I am the Deputy Director of Community Engagement for the Southern California region here at California College Guidance Initiative. And with me are also my colleagues, Doris Ingram, my fellow Deputy Director of Community Engagement for the Northern California region, and our president, Tessa Carmen DeRoy. So today, we're excited to introduce you to californiacolleges.edu, the state's official college and career planning platform. We, the California College Guidance Initiative, or CCGI, is the state-funded nonprofit that manages californiacolleges.edu. And at CCGI, we believe, like many of you and many other educational institutions and organizations, that the future of California really depends on the success of all students. And we know that ensuring the success for all students, especially those who have been traditionally excluded from higher education and high-paying careers, has significant challenges, from disconnected education systems to economic and racial inequities. So our goal is really to remove as many obstacles as we can to student success and help create a smoother pathway between K through 12, higher education, and careers through the use of californiacolleges.edu. So what is kind of californiacolleges.edu? Well, californiacolleges.edu really empowers students and families by providing them with a one-stop shop for the tools they need to successfully complete their journey from K through 12 to higher education and careers. These free resources include career assessments and exploration tools that can help students identify their values, their interests, learning styles, and strengths, and learn how those actually translate to real concrete careers. There are also college search tools and major search tools that help students figure out what and where they may want to study and how that relates to those careers that they've identified. Using our CSU and UC eligibility tools, students and educators can see a visual representation of a student's transcript and their progress towards completing their A through G requirements. When courses and CSU eligibility tools show up as green, they are considered pre-verified for the purposes of admission. So in addition to all of that for students, californiacolleges.edu provides districts and educators with easy to navigate lessons that streamline the college and financial aid application process, while allowing educators to monitor students' progress and intervene as necessary, and accessing reporting tools that support compliance with state education requirements. And I apologize if you hear in the background, they're doing some landscaping outside my window. So we're here to talk about financial aid, right? So we really want to dive deep into our financial aid tools. So in 2021, as John mentioned, the state of California made a huge stride in advancing equity for students throughout the state by passing AB 469, or All-In for Fafsa and California Dream Act. And this new law requires districts to ensure all 12th grade students submit a financial aid application. And this new law is exciting for many of us because it is aligned with research demonstrating that submitting a financial aid application is the strongest predictor of a student's actual enrollment in post-secondary education. So all in for Fafsa and the California Dream Act has the potential to be transformative for students, but only if the districts have tools to implement it. And that's why the state has invested in californiacolleges.edu in order to provide schools with tools to support them in their effort to ensure every graduating senior actually completes their financial aid application. So californiacolleges.edu provides free financial aid tools, which help students learn about what financial aid is, how they apply for it, how to actually launch and submit their application, and how they can secure aid so they can pay for whatever colleges they hope to attend. And one of the things that truly sets californiacolleges.edu apart is that integration with Fafsa and the California Dream Act. So when a student launches their public college and their financial aid applications through californiacolleges.edu, they'll be able to track whether they've launched, completed, and submitted their application. And in addition to californiacolleges.edu, we'll send a student's associated statewide student identifier, or SSID, if available, to Csac. So Csac then reports back, excuse me, on the student's application status to californiacolleges.edu and whether or not the student's school district has submitted their Cal Grant GPA. Our platform serves all students, supports educators in meeting the variety of student needs, and facilitates district accountability with financial aid. But we want to share with you what educators are actually saying about our financial aid tools and how other districts are leveraging our platform to support their students. We don't have audio, Therese.
In addition to it, it's a built-in user-friendly system. I was very excited to see the financial aid lessons. This is already created. There's nothing we have to do in addition to it. It's a built-in user-friendly system.
I was able to click on it with the students. We did it together. We did those first 2 modules, which took 20 minutes.
I think that's a huge benefit. The lessons are already built in and they're self-paced, and it's intuitive for the students.
Everybody says it was really clear, to the point, that it made sense. And it was our language. It wasn't too wordy, and it was specific, which made sense for the students.
We can run regular reports to drill down and see where our students are in the process. I can now click on a specific student and get specific information on just that one kid.
It saves counselors a lot of time, which of course is always going to be a benefit to our very, very busy site counselors.
I have 520 students on my caseload. So I have 100 and something per grade. It just made it so much easier, you know? I'm just so glad for this because this should be happening with all students.
So before we wrap up, we want to make sure we provide you with the necessary information
I'm very excited
and support to use the financial aid tools californiacolleges.edu has to offer. So here's how you can get started. You'll see the QR code on the screen. So you can scan the QR code to download our AB 469 implementation checklist, which will walk you through the steps needed to set you up to begin to use our financial aid tools. You'll see on the checklist that there is a link for batch creating student accounts. So for those of you that are part of K-12 school districts that are yet to be in partnership with us, we recommend creating basic student accounts via the batch creation process, which allows you to mass import student information through a CSV file instead of manually inputting student information one by one. When you batch create basic student accounts, you must provide each student's statewide student identifier, or SSID, which is key to tracking the status of each student's college and financial aid applications. And second, we ask you to reach out to us, our community engagement team, to learn more about californiacolleges.edu, to dig deeper into financial aid tools or the other functionalities, and to see how we can support your district goals by becoming our partners. So thank you so much for your time and your interest in learning more about californiacolleges.edu. We hope you walk away with not only understanding our platform, but more importantly, excited about it as you begin to see how you can help better serve your students as you implement AB 469 and further broader college and career planning needs. Thank you, John, as well, for having us. And our team will be monitoring the chat, so we'll be answering questions.
Okay, well, we appreciate you guys being on. That's important information. Let me share my screen again and fast forward here. I'm going to leave this up 1 second. Hopefully everyone can pull out their phone and scan that. You haven't done so already. Okay. So, hey, let's continue. We are going to continue with the Csac portion of the presentation. Hopefully you have a lot of questions about CCGI, and hopefully the CCGI folks are able to answer those. If that QR code doesn't work on your phone, my phone is finicky. So if it doesn't work on, whoops, are we good? All right, so if that QR code didn't work on your phone, then just go ahead and use the email and they will reach back out to you. All right. I just want to make sure you guys can see the screen okay. Are we good?
Hi, John. I switched to sharing my screen. Is that all right?
Oh, okay. Victoria's on it. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, I know we're jumping around a little bit, but that's okay. So we are going to continue. Victoria is going to do this next section. Victoria is the co-lead this year for the California statewide financial aid workshops and has been really important in this process. So Victoria, take it away.
All right. Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us this morning. We've heard a lot of great information from our FAFSA presenter, Luann, and thank you, CCGI, for being a part of these workshops. We are going to jump in now to our Csac dedicated portion. John provided that overview of the agenda. So I'm Victoria Vixney, another trainer with the California Student Aid Commission. And I am going to turn off my camera now. I find it a little bit distracting, so then we can get started. All right, can someone just put in the chat that they can hear me and see my screen okay? All right, thank you. So we are going to jump into the All In for Fafsa California Dream Act portion. We've been talking about this throughout the presentation, and you've probably heard a little bit about all of this, but this is going off of AB 469, and Csac is marketing it as All In for Fafsa California Dream Act application. It's starting in this academic school year that we all just started, and it's for our high schools and the local educational agencies must ensure that all of their seniors are completing either a FAFSA or a California Dream Act application, depending on their citizenship status. There is an opt-out waiver option. However, we are hoping that's the last resort and that all students are encouraged to explore their financial aid opportunities. So the goal is really to expand access to financial aid and provide that knowledge about what is available post-high school. So here's a screenshot of the model opt-out form. We did develop it since it is part of the legislation that it has to be available. So your school can use this exact form, or you can modify it, personalize it a little bit, but then you will need to work with your legal team to ensure it meets the criteria for the model opt-out. A student who is 18 years or older can complete it on their behalf. A legal guardian or parent can complete it. A legally emancipated student or your own school site can complete it as well. But we are emphasizing that we don't want this to be the default option. We are really hoping that there can be conversations around the importance of a financial aid application instead of just handing this to the student and not having them have that educational piece behind financial aid. The first step is going to be submitting an application, and that's where then they'll figure out how much their family could be eligible for higher ed. And we want to emphasize that in California, we do have two applications, the FAFSA and the California Dream Act. So if you are speaking to a student and asking about their financial aid, make sure that you're including both of those applications. You don't want to exclude anyone, but you also don't want to have to out any students. So if they are not wanting to disclose their documentation status, then you can just be very inclusive and say, have you completed your FAFSA or your DREAM Act application? And then they can say yes or no, and you can support them from there. Now with applying early, so we will emphasize throughout this presentation that October 1st is when the applications open. So we're pushing all students to apply as soon as possible, starting October 1st, instead of waiting until the deadline of March 2nd. And one of the reasons behind that is that if a student applies in October, our system starts processing them for Cal Grant consideration as early as November. So then a student will submit their application. In November, they'll receive notification if they're eligible for thousands of dollars of free money through Cal Grant. So that's before they even start going to those holiday parties, talking with family about post-high school goals. They'll know if they have the funds available. And then also it gives them the opportunity before they have to make a decision on where they will go for the fall. They'll understand what type of aid and financial awards are available at each campus that they're applying to. The FAFSA does take about 3 to 5 days to process through our system. So once we are processing for Cal Grant consideration, it takes a little bit of time to go through all the checks. The DREAM Act application is our own Csac application, so then that processes almost immediately. The question is, why is financial aid application completion so important? At the student level, it's creating a sense of security and insurance. So in options and opportunities for students after high school. Maybe they're not sure what they want to do. They're not 100% committed to the idea of a 4-year or even a traditional associate's. But if they submit that application and they're getting it in before the priority deadline, then it's allowing them to think over their options, see what's available, and not eliminating anything before they graduate. It's also supporting equity in higher education. So no matter what district or school, excuse me, the student attends, they're able to have the same education about financial aid. And then we know that college degrees and vocational training can result in increased earning potential. It also provides 401ks, sick leave, PTO, so better quality of life overall with the job opportunities that come from any type of post-high school education. And just a reminder that a completed financial aid application has been the doorway for many first-generation college students in California. So I want to take this time to just thank you all. I know a lot of you already do amazing work with your students, and you are aware of how much financial aid can be a life-changing opportunity. So thank you all, and that's why we are just here to support you in this effort now that it is a statewide requirement. So then bringing it to the state level of why this is important, maybe this is making it a little black and white, a little fiscally centered, but just want to point out that for every $1 that California invests in students' education, we are getting a return on investment of $4.50. That's coming from things like increased taxes on the college graduate's income and also lower costs for social services and incarceration. So this is supporting every single Californian. This is supporting our communities, our families, and it's assisting in closing the huge skilled worker degree gap. We want to retain our talent. So we are spending 13 years on these students, K through 12. And if we can take another 45 minutes, 1 hour, of course, we know some students, their situations are going to take a little bit longer because their financial aid application has some errors or hiccups or whatever the case may be. But if we can take that additional time for these students, then we will hopefully be retaining them in their higher education journey. And then also post higher ed, they'll be working here and filling those much needed positions in our workforce. So how are you going to do this? Like I mentioned, you probably are already doing an amazing job on your campus and reaching as many students as you can. So to make this a campus-wide effort with the AB 469, the first step is to build your team. So you can brainstorm right now who might be able to assist with this requirement. It can't just be all on you. So if you are able to reach out to your school administrators, any teachers that are on campus that may have an interest in supporting students during their classroom instruction, also student leaders, so reaching out to your ASB or Key Club leaders, even your sports team captains and other students who have a lot of potential. Maybe they're not as involved in other extracurriculars, but they could be interested in supporting their peers with financial aid. And then looking off campus, you can check in with the nonprofits that we've been working with, also any places of worship. So if students and families are going to their church or their temple on the weekend, then maybe those people can assist with providing information on financial aid and also supporting them in their pursuit of higher ed. We have lots of college access programs in the state of California. Also your local colleges, checking in with them, seeing if they can provide any support for your Cash for College nights. And immigration attorneys and tax preparation services are just a couple more ideas that we've brainstormed so far. This slide has a lot of information on it, but it's a breakdown. I actually took this from Val Verde Unified School District, and it's their example of their team that they've put together on each of their campuses. So on the left column, you'll see the position and then the activities that each of these roles provides in their pursuit of financial aid application completion. So each role has a pretty specific activity, but also you may see throughout the table that almost every position has promote college going culture as one of their activities. So it doesn't have to be a huge lift. It can be as simple as when a freshman comes onto your campus, you start asking them, what are they interested in? What do they think would be a cool job after high school? And what could be the education that gets them to that position? So take a look at this. We do have the PDF, so we've been sending that out. Just a heads up, we've gotten a lot of questions about this, but we are sending them as attachments right now, and some people's firewalls are blocking the large attachments. We are working to get it posted on our website. We are just going through the ADA compliance process, so stay tuned. We will make sure that you end up with a copy of this PDF. I want to highlight some of our partners again. John has brought this up, but we are partnering with these amazing organizations. So we'll be providing more information throughout the presentation on some of these. And speaking of, we have PK. This is the Parent Institute for Quality Education. So they are connecting the families and the parents to the campuses. If you are needing support with family engagement, then you may want to reach out to them and see how they can support your campus. They do a lot of work with lower income families and English learner families. So they're able to provide that support and resources if you are wanting to have a better strategy with connecting with your families. So you've got your team. The next step is building your plan. So getting your team together and figuring out how you're going to approach this all in for Fafsa California Dream Act and supporting your students in their pursuit of application completion. First step is training. You are all here, so thank you for attending this workshop. If you are wanting to attend one of our in-person workshops later on in the season, feel free to register for one of those. Next, you'll want to review our online training materials. We have put together several resources. There are some FAFSA resources as well as Dream Act and just other areas that you can ask for support. Marketing, social media, of course, is a huge component at this point. We have on our website some social media toolkits, so you can download the graphics, and we also provide sample captions that you can copy and paste onto your social media channels. And then if you also have a school website, this may still be a good place to advertise for the parents if that's where they're typically going to get the information versus social media. And then a Cash for College workshop is an evening event where the students and families can attend together. This really helps because the parents know their marital status date, they are familiar with their taxes, so it can be very beneficial to have the evening time so that more parents can attend outside of business hours. And then incentives. So determining your funding for any incentives that you can provide to your students. So if they're submitting their application early or at least by the March 2nd deadline, then maybe you can have some type of party or extra tickets for graduation. I have a slide later in the presentation that gives some more examples, so we can talk more in detail at that point with that slide. I wanted to include this slide in here as a visual for you all so that you can see. I don't know how we're at the end of August. The summer flew by. So right now, as students are returning to the classroom, this is a good time to have them start creating their Fsa Id. That stands for Federal Student Aid ID. It's what they'll need to complete their FAFSA and assign their FAFSA. Or you can have the students creating their CADA account, that's the California Dream Act application account. So they'll need a username and a password to start their application. So this month and September, they can be doing this if you can set aside time during one of the classes. They can work on it or have it as an assignment to complete at home. But that way they are ready to go come October 1st when the applications open. So then from October to March, you can host your Cash for College workshops and do any one-on-one support that's needed. March 2nd is the priority deadline, so hopefully every student can submit one by then. And then May 1st is the college decision day. So as I pointed out, it's important to have their application in because then they can have a better idea of what type of financial aid is available before they have to make their decision on their campus May 1st. So as your students start completing their applications, the next step will be for tracking your progress. You'll want to check the Web Grants reports weekly. John will give a brief overview of what types of reports are available, but also we do have additional webinar trainings. So if you want to check out our website and sign up for those trainings, we provide a deeper dive into what it looks like to be working your reports. We have our Csac data dashboards. This is on our website, so it does not require Web Grants login, and it's providing a summary data of your submissions. And you can break it down by demographics of your campus, so it gives you a better snapshot of where outreach may be needed. We also have our race to submit. This is promoting some friendly competition. Web Grants access is also not required for this. And I have another slide that will go into more detail. First, we're going to look a little bit closer. So here are some screenshots of the data dashboard. And we are also working on an enhanced report that's going to have a download to Excel as the default, and provide an easier snapshot on knowing which students need to have additional outreach for, and also will show if they've created a Web Grants for Students account. So stay tuned, we are working on an enhanced report specifically for All In for Fafsa CADA, but you can also check out the data dashboard to see how your campus is doing as students start submitting their applications. So here's that race to submit. So a little bit more information. You can check your progress at your own high school, but you can also look at your school districts and your county. I like to say if your school is not great at sports, that's okay. Your campus can be really good at financial aid application completion, and you can challenge your rival schools and see who comes out ahead for their submission rates. We have a leaderboard, and you're going to be compared to schools that have a similar class size. So don't worry if you have a really large senior class size, you're not being compared to the schools with only 20 or 30 students. They have their own classification, and so they'll be competing against their similar schools, and then you'll be in your own category. We do have a ceremony each year to honor the winners, and then it's a great time because they're all sharing their best practices. So it's a great way to see what other campuses are doing and how they encourage their students to submit their applications. Speaking of, I did collect a few best practices for this presentation. So Rancho Verde High School has a senior enrollment count of 415 on average. And for them to reach a really high completion rate, they conduct one-on-one meetings, and they also incentivize early completion and then make it a priority to have regular follow-up with every senior. And they are checking for an EFC. That's the expected family contribution. If an application does not have an EFC, that means there's usually an error or pending items. So very important to check for that EFC. And they reached a 94% completion rate. So really awesome job. Then from San Marcos High School, they have an enrollment count of 902, so a huge senior class, and they have learned to be persistent and inclusive. So always saying Fafsa Id to make sure that every student has that opportunity to complete an application. They actually partner with teachers. So if they get their senior government classes to provide class time for financial aid applications, and then they follow up as many times as necessary. Another important point that they brought up is that you can't be afraid to ask some tough and personal questions. We know it can get a little awkward. You're asking about income information, marital status for the parents, but remembering that this can be a life-changing event means that it's more important to ask those questions and have an awkward 30 minutes to an hour than for the student to miss out on the opportunity to pursue higher education. We do have a new program that we're lifting off the ground this year. We are introducing a Csac Student Ambassador program that will allow peer-to-peer training for financial aid awareness. It will stay very high overview, so we just want peers to let their friends know, their peers know, when the applications open up, the 2 different applications, and why it's important to fill one out, and importance of pursuing education post-high school. If you are interested in bringing this program to your campus and becoming a facilitator of the ambassador program, you can scan this QR code, or when you have the PDF of this presentation, you can click the link, and it's a quick Survey Monkey, and once you submit it, we'll send you more information about this program and how you can start recruiting your student ambassadors. All right, so I mentioned that we have a slide about incentives, so here it is. We want to make sure you're celebrating your success. There are super simple ways I've been gathering from some of our Race to Submit winners to make it special when a student submits their application. One is to have a big bell in the quad so that the student can go up and ring the bell once they've submitted their application. It just gives them some recognition. Food is always a great incentive. I have compiled, so for Costco, Winco, and Sam's Club, there are forms that you can complete to ask for a donation, and then they'll be able to provide you with some funds so that you can get food for your campus. So there is a resource document on our website that walks you through step-by-step for those 3 locations, but you can always reach out to a local grocery store as well. School spirit can be fun if you want to ask your local colleges for donations, or even your own school spirit works too. If you can check with your administration about ceremony capacity, extra graduation tickets can be a great incentive. Students with bigger families always feel that pressure to have enough graduation tickets. So if you're able to offer a couple more for maybe early completion of the application, that could be a great incentive. And then a success party. If you don't have to plan it, so don't take it on as another thing for yourself, but you can check in with your ASB and student leaders. I know they love organizing the school dances and the spirit week, so why not throw in a success party for application completion? So some key takeaways. The why for AB 469 or all in for Fafsa California Dream Act is that it's ensuring equity to financial aid application access. As I mentioned, it shouldn't matter what district or what school a student is attending. Everyone should have the opportunity to complete an application and receive financial aid. It's increasing the percentage of students who enroll in post-secondary education and having access to those higher paying jobs with 401ks and PTO and sick leave. And then it's also bringing back the focus to the applications after over 2 years of the pandemic. And to re-emphasize, we want you to partner with us. So we are available. We have the social media and marketing materials, those printed resources, and also Cash for College support so that you can host your very own Cash for College on your school site. The Education Trust West is another one of our partners that we would like to highlight right now. So they have been super helpful in preparing for these workshops. They put together an approved vendors list. So they gathered lots of organizations throughout the state of California and put together a really concise document with some action items on how you can reach out. And they also drafted an example support request letter. It's really straightforward. You can copy and paste it as an email, add your name and send it off to any of these organizations, just asking how they can support your campus in these efforts. Now I'm going to walk you through the Csac updates and new programs. So before I transition, once again, thank you all so much for the hard work that you put in every day with our students. We know you are doing a great job. And at this point, we're hoping that this initiative can only just increase the amount of students who are submitting their applications and learning about their opportunities post-high school. With that being said, I'm going to cover briefly each of these topics. And again, this will be recorded, or this is being recorded, so you can always go back to it. And you will eventually have the PDF of these slides as well. So E3, this is the Community College Entitlement Cal Grant. It started in the past academic year, 21-22. And what this means is that more students attending a California community college are now entitled to a Cal Grant. So it's removing the time out of high school and the age barrier for many students. So it's super exciting. And what it means for your students in particular is that if they miss the March 2nd deadline, so they're not considered a high school entitlement student anymore, they could still be considered for community college entitlement if they are attending a California community college and they submit their application by September 2nd. So giving them another chance if they are going to a community college. The next program is the Learning Aligned Employment Program, or LAPE as we're calling it. This is essentially a state work study, and it is putting an emphasis on finding a position that is aligning with their career interests. So if they're majoring in, like they have an engineer major, then hopefully they could find an organization that might be providing some hands-on engineering experience. And then their paycheck will be partly coming from this fund, so this award, the Learning Aligned Employment money. And this is being implemented in this upcoming school year. So it's being rolled out and there is more information on the website. And then the goal, or one of the hopes of this program as well, is that the students gain experience, and then there might be some potential for a full-time job offer after they graduate. So starting to partner students with industry opportunities. The Golden State Teacher Grant Program has been expanding. This year it is including additional programs outside of the traditional credential. So it's including school counseling, social work and psychology, child welfare and attendance services programs. This provides up to $20,000 for students who are pursuing a credential or one of those other programs. There is a teaching requirement with it, so participants must work in a priority school for 4 years within 8 years after completing their program. So for more information, if you're interested, if you have a coworker who might be interested in this program, you can check out our website. And then also if your students are interested in pursuing a credential, you can also let them know about this opportunity. The California Dream Act Service Incentive Grant, or Dcig. This provides volunteer opportunities to our Dream Act applicants. And so if they are receiving a Cal Grant B, then they could apply for this program and receive a stipend for completing community service hours. We are excited. It was increased up to $4,500 this year, and they will need to perform 300 hours of community or volunteer service within the academic year. We also have a brand new program, California for All College Corps. We do not directly administer this program, but we do want to mention it because our AB 540 Dreamers are eligible to participate. However, they must apply for the Dream Act Service Incentive Grant Program, the one that we just looked at the last slide. This is a great program because it's offering $10,000 if the students complete 450 hours of community service. Right now, here on the slide, you can see the campuses that are offering it and administering it. And then it is brand new, so I'm sure it is only going to grow. And it is administered through the California Volunteers, the Californians for All. So you can check out the website for more information. Now I'm going to switch gears and start talking about our foster youth cohort. We have a couple of changes that have expanded access for their financial aid. The Foster Youth Access Award greatly increases the amount of money that's available for non-tuition expenses. So with Cal Grant A, they can now receive a $6,000 access award in addition to the tuition and fees portion. Cal Grant B, the standard access award is increased up to $6,000, and the Cal Grant C books and supplies portion is increased up to $4,000. This is available for students who have been in foster care for at least 1 day after age 13, and if they are under age 26 at the start of the academic year, and is available at our California public colleges or our private nonprofit institutions. The next award that applies to our foster youth cohort and is also for students who have been in foster care for at least 1 day from the age of 13 is our Cal Grant B for foster youth. This has been around for a couple of school years now, but we do want to just point out that this specific award does have some differences. So the Cal Grant B, the high school entitlement application window for non-foster youth students is for high school seniors and prior year graduates. So they only have 2 years to qualify for it. Whereas if they are a foster youth, then they can qualify as a high school entitlement until they are under the age of, or until age 26 of the July 1st of the award year. The application deadline, non-foster youth, it's going to be March 2nd, but for foster youth students, it will be September 2nd if they're attending a California community college. And the biggest impact is that now foster youth students have up to 8 years of full-time enrollment eligibility. So they can be receiving Cal Grant for up to 8 years. The middle class scholarship, we'll talk about now. This is going under some changes. So now we're titling it MCS 2.0. And this is your answer to students and families that say they make too much money. The middle class scholarship is available to these families who have higher incomes and don't qualify for Cal Grant. However, with the 2.0, it's now looking at the cost of attendance and not just tuition, and it is greatly increasing the amount of awards that are available, and it's also increased the income and assets that a family can make and still be eligible to receive it. So if you're having pushback from students and families because of their income, you can point out that there's still a middle class scholarship. There's no additional application that they need to do. Just complete the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application and they'll be considered for this award. And it's free money that doesn't have to be paid back. You may have heard that there are going to be some Cal Grant program changes. We have been pushing for Cal Grant reform for many years now. So throughout the presentation, you've been hearing Cal Grant A, B, and C, some mention of entitlement cycles. So luckily now there was an approval in the state budget. We do have to ensure that there's going to be enough revenue in 24-25 to support the changes, but as long as that revenue is there, then it's going to overhaul the program so that there's only a Cal Grant 2 for students attending a community college and a Cal Grant 4 for students attending a 4-year university. So very exciting. We are hoping that all the revenue is there and that we can transition smoothly to the Cal Grant reform. I'm now going to go over some of our other programs and provide some additional information. Thank you all for hanging with us. We know it's a long morning with a lot of information. So just to point out, we have our main programs, Cal Grant, Middle Class Scholarship, Chaffee Grant. We do have several other smaller programs. So if you have any students who fall into the smaller program cohorts, you can look at our website and provide them information if they are eligible for some of those smaller financial aid programs. Here's one of our charts breaking down the Cal Grant A, B, and C. We do have a video on our YouTube channel that goes into more detail. So just to provide an overview here, this top row is for Cal Grant A. This is for students and families from higher income backgrounds. At a community college, the Cal Grant A typically goes on reserve unless the student is receiving a Foster Youth Access Award or Students with Dependence Access Award. At a CSU and UC, they'll receive their tuition, and at the private schools, they'll receive their tuition award as well. At a community, or for Cal Grant B, the middle row, this is for students and families from lower income backgrounds, and at a community college, they'll receive just the access portion. At the 4-year schools, they'll receive the access portion in their first year, and then in their second year, they'll receive tuition and fees and access. At the community college, for Cal Grant C, they can receive $1,094. And then Cal Grant C is geared towards our vocational and technical programs. The CSUs and UCs don't have any programs that meet those requirements, but students can receive Cal Grant C at the private nonprofit or for-profit campuses. It is a common misconception that all schools in California are Cal Grant eligible. However, there are some campuses that don't meet our eligibility standards. So if a student is applying to maybe a smaller school that you've never heard about, it's always a good idea to double check our eligible Cal Grant schools list and see if they will be able to receive that grant at the campus. Chaffee Grant is also for our foster youth students. However, this one is for students who are in foster care between the ages of 16 and 18, so a little bit different age requirements. This pays up to $5,000 annually and can be used towards other college expenses like rent, food, transportation. It is a federal and state funded grant, and it is subject to availability of funds. This is one of our programs that does require a separate application. So if you have any students who fall into this cohort of being in foster care between the ages of 16 and 18, then they will want to do a one-time Chaffee Grant application in addition to submitting their FAFSA or DREAM Act every year. Students with Dependent Children is another Access Award. This did roll out a few years ago, and then the Foster Youth Access Award was mirrored very closely to this one. This is available for students attending a Cal Grant eligible school with a child 18 years old or younger, whom they support 50% or more. The Cal Grant A now has an access portion and it's up to $6,000. Cal Grant B increases to $6,000 and Cal Grant C goes up to $4,000. Some key application dates. So March 2nd is our priority deadline. We want to make sure high school seniors and previous year high school graduates are applying by then so that they can be considered for an entitlement, high school entitlement award. The new September 2nd deadline provides an opportunity for anyone who missed March 2nd and is planning on attending a community college to still be considered for an entitlement Cal Grant. And if your students have missed all of the deadlines, we still encourage them to apply. There are other financial aid programs out there for FAFSA filers. There's the Pell Grant, and for Dream Act application filers, there could be some campus-specific aid. Also, most scholarships, most outside scholarships do require a financial aid application to be on file with the school's financial aid office. So always a good idea to still submit one, even if they've missed the deadline. We want to highlight that there are other avenues besides a bachelor's or associate's degree. So there are the vocational, occupational, and technical programs. We have a lot of great schools in California. Are you okay? And so if your students are interested in a four-year, then they can check out some of these programs. I spoke to someone at the state fair actually from Shasta College, and they had a logging program and they had a huge tractor there. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So if your students are interested, definitely have them check out other options. And the Cal Grant C is intended for these types of programs. So still free money for your students. Speaking of, the California community colleges have a lot of these great opportunities. So we have 116 colleges across the state. There is most likely a local one near your high school. So if you are able to connect your students to that local campus, then they can see if they're interested in a community college and any of the programs that are offered there. They have their website, icangotocollege.com, so you can direct your students to check out the resources on their website. So speaking of community colleges, I want to take a moment to talk about the Cal Grant B and community colleges. We often get the question that if a student receives a Cal Grant B and is planning on attending a community college, should they put their award on hold until they transfer to a four-year? And we advise that if the student needs the money, they should definitely take it. They don't want to be missing out on paying for a book or food or their rent payment because they are holding off to use their Cal Grant until they transfer. And there are a couple reasons as well, because once the student transfers to a four-year after spending 2 or 3 years at a community college, they're typically not needing a full 4 years to complete their degree because they already have taken so many units at the community college. So then that means they would be leaving money on the table by not using 4 years of Cal Grant. Also, when they transfer, they're taking all of those units with them. So then the four-year university is going to be calculating their education level as most likely going to be a junior, which then in our system makes them an EL3, which indicates that they only have 2 years of Cal Grant eligibility remaining. So we recommend the student takes their Cal Grant B access portion of the award for at least the first year that they're at a community college, and then they can always meet with their financial aid advisor or a academic counselor and see where they're at with their transfer plan, and then go from there if they are wanting to put their award on hold until they transfer to the four-year. Taking a gap year, this is if your high school students receive a Cal Grant, but they're not wanting to go straight into higher ed. Maybe they want to take off a year to travel or work to save up some money. The important part is then they need to put their Cal Grant on hold. They need to place it on a leave of absence. So they can't just leave it there and not take any action, because then Csac will think that they're not using it and take the funds away. So they will need to make a Web Grants for Students account, log in, and place their Cal Grant on hold. So to talk about some other cohorts that you may have at your campus, our homeless unaccompanied youth need extra support. School is probably the most stable environment that they have. So if you are able to identify these students and connect them with additional resources and additional information on college, then this can be a huge support to them. When they are answering the question on their application, if they are homeless and unaccompanied, then they will be considered independent and they don't need to include their parents' information. This status will need to be verified at their financial aid office, and it can be verified by the high school or school district homeless liaison, a director of emergency shelter, director of a runaway or homeless center, or the college's financial aid administrator. Youth with juvenile justice involvement, we would like to point out that they can go to college and they can receive financial aid. There is a misconception at times that if they have juvenile justice involvement, they are not eligible for financial aid, and that is not true. They can still receive financial aid and they can still go to college. Many youth who have been involved in the justice system are potentially also involved, or they have been in foster care, so they could be eligible to apply for Chaffee Grant and also eligible for those expanded Cal Grant Cal Grant B for foster youth and the Foster Youth Access Award. So just looking out for your students and making sure they can connect with the resources that they're eligible for. Some alternative sources of financial assistance. We know financial aid might not always cover the total cost of attendance. So if students work part-time at a company that offers college tuition assistance or reimbursement, Chipotle has a program for that, some other companies as well. Searching for scholarships and applying for scholarships can be a great way to add the free money to what's available for paying for their higher ed. FastWeb, we're partnering with FastWeb, and it's a database where you can search and pull up a bunch of scholarships that you're eligible for. And then also checking with other local service organizations, and if their parents work anywhere that offers some type of tuition assistance, then that can be a great way to bridge the gap between financial aid and the total cost of attendance. Also, many campuses are now offering food pantries that also have some basic toiletry items. There's a lot of emergency housing programs now on campuses, and also free bus passes and assistance with the CalFresh and TANF application process. Travis Credit Union is another partner of these workshops, and they are focusing on helping our high school graduates and our young adults have smarter spending habits, and making sure that they're not maxing out credit cards, that they're saving and paying their debt on time. And they have their Awesome Cause, Awesome You, which allows them to provide different trainings and webinars, some boot camps. And so look at their website and see what resources you can provide your students. Just some quick tips. So beginning October 1st, that's our big push for when students should be filling out their application, no later than March 2nd. Have your students apply regardless of income. Don't let them be the ones that are disqualifying themselves. They don't know what's out there. They don't know what's available. So submit regardless. And then instruct students to add at least one California college. If they are dead set on studying out of state, still have them at a California college, then they'll see what they're eligible for in financial aid, and maybe their in-state tuition with their Cal Grant is going to look a lot better than out-of-state tuition with limited aid. Also, after they submit, it's very important if you can have them go to mygrantinfo.csac.ca.gov. This is where they will create their Web Grants for Students account. And this is necessary so that they complete any follow-up or pending items. If they aren't completing this step, if they're not looking in their account to do any pending things, then they could lose out on their aid. And along those lines, reminding students to check their emails and to become their own financial aid advocates. So if they see anything that needs a follow-up, then they need to be working with their college and asking questions if they're not sure how to proceed. All right, so we have made it for the break. And we're getting close at this point. We just have one more section left, and John will be wrapping up the day, wrapping up the morning for us. It is 10:41, so is it okay, John, if we come back at 10:42? How about we come back at 10:50 and we will finish up with the last section?
That works.
All right, sounds good.
All right, everyone, we'll see you at 10:50. Thank you. Now we're recording. Okay, excellent. So this next section is called High Schools Doing Your Part. And this is basically talking about, kind of how high schools can best partner with Csac and what that timeline looks like. Let's take a look. So here's a little bit of an academic year checklist starting in September and going through, the following August. So here's a list of things that you should be considering. Most of you already do. Every school or district does this a little bit differently, obviously. So this just kind of gives you an idea. So we're going to go through this one by one, and hopefully you find it helpful. So first of all, before we even do that, let's talk about access to web grants. We highly recommend that everyone has access to web grants. Now, I know you might be saying, well, I don't upload the GPAs, or I don't really do this or that. So the reason that you want your staff to have web grants access is it's because it allows them to look at the reports to show where your students are at any particular, phase of the application process, the matching process, the being awarded part of it. And it's really helpful if more people are involved in that process. So you can take a snapshot at any given time to see, where your students are and what you need to do specifically to help them if you have web grants access. Sometimes you have people who only have read access. In other words, they can only look at the information. That's okay. Sometimes you can give people the ability to do both, read and write access. It all starts with your system administrator. Find out who your system administrator is, and you can request access. There's no limit on the number of users who can have web grants access. So you can have 2 system administrators at a high school. That's typical. Sometimes that's at the district level. Okay. But at the high school level, you can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different people that have web grants access, if that's helpful for you to check those reports and assist students. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this GPA demographic verification form. We recommend that prior to uploading your GPAs, you verify with the students that the information you have for the GPA upload, and that specifically is the name, the address, the date of birth, the things like that, is correct. So you can do this a couple of different ways. We have this form on our website. You could provide this to your students and say, hey, put this information in. We want to make sure that the information we have on file is correct. Or you can do the opposite. You can tell students, this is the information we have. This is what we're going to use to upload your GPA into the system. Now, why is that important? Because if the name is not correct or the name is different than what is going to be on the FAFSA or the California Dream Act, then it's not going to match. And if it doesn't match in our system, it does not process through. It does not process through for Cal Grant consideration or financial aid consideration in general. So do a preemptive strike, make sure the information matches. The name is really important. The address, and we know that students don't always put the address where they're actually living. That has nothing to do with anything as far as I'm concerned, except that if the address that is on the GPA upload information doesn't match the address that's on the actual application, that could cause it not to match and process through. So check with your students, have your students check with you. Every school has a system in place to change demographic information. We recommend that you do that. Uploading GPAs. Most of you do not upload GPAs. I would say that of the people who are here, it's probably 1%, if that. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but to upload GPAs, you can do it a couple of different ways. If you have an SIS system, a student information system like ARIES or PowerSchool, normally that can create the information that you need to upload. So it can create the text file that you can drop right into our system. And that makes it really easy. If not, you have to use our system with our Excel spreadsheet that's macro enabled, and you can do it that way. If you are the person who uploads GPAs, we admit it is a little bit of a wonky process. It's not super easy or super intuitive. Having said that, thousands of high schools every year manage to get through and do that. If you're going to be the new person uploading GPAs, we strongly recommend that you contact us. There are some resources that we can provide to you and some training that we can provide to you that will make life so much easier. So when you upload GPAs, you have to obviously use what's called the Cal Grant GPA calculation. Most of the time, we're just talking about your senior class initially, right? And the senior class, we're going to use, what years are we going to use? Sophomore and junior years, and any summer school subsequent to that. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, what if you have a freshman or a sophomore who's graduating? That's really highly unusual, but it happens. I've seen it happen. So in that case, you don't have GPA information that you can use. They would have to provide a test score, like from an SAT or an ACT or GED that we can convert to a GPA. Graduating juniors is a little bit more common. In the case of a junior who's going to graduate, we only have that 10th grade that we can use. And if they took summer school after 10th grade, that's what you're going to use to calculate the GPA. Graduating seniors, pretty easy, 10th and 11th grade and the summers that follow. And then it says last year's graduates. So that means your students who graduated last year. First of all, why would you upload GPAs for them? Well, it's really important. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But if you are uploading GPAs for your previous year graduates, you're going to include 10th, 11th, and 12th grade grades for that particular submission. You want to notify your juniors that they have the ability to opt out of having an electronic GPA uploaded. So the law mandates, the statute mandates that you notify your juniors by January 1st, and basically you tell them in some way, shape, or form, hey, we upload GPAs electronically your senior year. If you don't want us to do that, you have to opt out. Is there a really compelling reason to opt out? There really isn't. There's no reason. There's no negative ramification that comes from having a GPA uploaded, even if the student doesn't end up going to college or whatever. So, but you have to notify them. Now, we have a form that you can use. A lot of schools and districts will create their own form or way to communicate that. Remember, this is different than opting out of completing a financial aid application. That's a whole other process. Victoria touched on that. So this is to opt out of not having your GPA uploaded electronically. It happens very rarely. So you want to make sure students and their families understand what they're opting out of in that case. Edit and match unmatched GPAs every week. This is super important. When can you do this? Why do you do this? So when do students start filling out a financial aid application? October 1st. Yay. When does that information populate into our system? So normally by the end of October, you're going to start seeing that information in the reports that you can pull up. And certainly by early November, you're going to start seeing that information. So you want to make sure that you are checking your reports and you are doing what we call editing and matching these students. Remember, if a GPA gets uploaded and then the financial aid application information gets uploaded, those two things are just floating around in cyberspace. They're trying to connect. They're trying to connect using certain data points, the name, the date of birth, the school code, the address, and others. And if that information doesn't match up, especially the name, but if that information doesn't match up, it doesn't match. If it doesn't match, it doesn't process. If it doesn't process, you're going to have a student who does not get financial aid, or they're going to be in a holding pattern until something gets fixed. So you might have to go in and check this every week. We recommend that you do that, and you can edit and match the GPA information. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in more detail. And here we go. See, I told you. So what is matching? What is editing? So let's go to editing first. We're gonna mix up the order here. Editing is the process whereby you can go in and edit the information that is on the GPA upload that you previously did. So you upload all the GPAs, right? You're not just uploading GPA, you're uploading their name and their school code and their address and some other demographic information. So if you upload that information and you go, whoops, we gave this kid a 2.27, he should be a 3.89, our bad. You can go in and you can make that correction. You can correct demographic information. You can make a lot of different corrections, and editing can assist in the matching process. Matching is what you do. You have to have Web Grants access. This is a good reason to have Web Grants access. Matching is what you do when the application is not connecting to the GPA upload. You can go in and force match it. You can say, yep, this goes to this, click, and it will allow it to process through. So it's a really important part of the process. It's the responsibility of the schools and the districts to do that. Csac does this also nonstop. So with everyone involved, you know, we want to make sure that all these students process through for financial aid. Now, we do have a lot of information specific to GPA reports and matching and editing. We have information on YouTube. We have weekly live webinars that we do that go over this. You can sign up for those. We recommend that you check out this information, especially if this is a process that's new to you. And it's on YouTube. So here's what you do. Friday night, no plans. You invite over a bunch of your high school counselor buddies. And you, what are we going to do? Are we going to watch Netflix? No, be quiet, sit down. I made popcorn. And then you click on your YouTube link and boom, you watch this with all your friends. You're going to be super popular. Trust me. Check out this information. If you have any questions on how to get there, please email us and we will be happy to assist you. Web Grants for Students account. Did you know that if a, oops, sorry, jumped the gun. If a student has a Cal grant, they have to have a Web Grants for Students account. What? Yes. Why? Because there's a couple of things that they need to do to ensure that they're going to get paid. Primarily, they need to go in and they have to verify the college of attendance. So remember, you can list up to 10 colleges, actually more if you go in and go back out, but you can list up to 10 colleges on either of the applications. So on the Fafsa or the Dream Act application. When you are going to get aid, our system's going to say, hey, which school are you actually going to? You listed 10. Now we're going to default to the first one you listed, but oftentimes that is not the school where the student will be going. So on their Web Grants for Students account that they've created, you got to tell them, they're going to go in and they're going to verify their college of attendance. If you don't do that, the student is going to show that they have a Cal Grant, but they're not going to be able to get that Cal Grant because there's going to be a hold on their account. So they're going to, like my daughter does, walk across the street to American River College and stand in line and say, hey, I got a Cal Grant BEA for me. And they're going to say, whoops, no, sorry, we can't disperse that money because there's a hold in your account. All right. Now, the colleges can actually assist in that process as well, but we want to make sure the students are doing that. And they want to make sure that, they're going in and taking care of that. There's a lot of compelling reasons for them to have a Web Grants for Students account. They can check their award status. They can see how much remaining eligibility they have. They can make changes to their demographic information. They can see why they weren't awarded or if there's something that they need to submit. Lots of stuff. So how does this work? If the student's filling out a FAFSA, they fill out the FAFSA, they wait about a week because that's how long it takes for that information to populate into our system. And then they create the Web Grants for Students account. They can't do it before they complete the FAFSA. If they're doing the California Dream Act application, what's cool is that when they do that application, they're actually creating the same login information they need for Web Grants for Students. So that's one advantage with the CADA, or the California Dream Act application, on our system. High school graduation verification. So students will get an email saying, hey, do you want to self-verify your high school graduation? They have the ability to do that. Most of the time, it's going to be the school or the district. And, this has to be done fairly soon, actually. I'm trying to remember when the date is, August 30th, maybe. So this is something that you guys do every year. Now, you can't do this until the actual month that your students are going to graduate. So if your students graduate in May is when you can go in and verify their graduation status. June, same thing. So that's when you can go in. It's going to default to all graduated. Also, you're only going to see the students who have been awarded, and you're not going to see the students who have self-verified. So you might go in and look at that list and say, this doesn't seem like everybody. Well, like I said, they have to have been awarded, and if they already did it on their own via Web Grants, they're going to drop out and you're not going to see them. They default to graduated. So if that's the case, and hopefully that's the case for all your students, then you're done. You just click the little verification button and you're good to go. If you are certain that they are not going to graduate, you click that. If it's pending, so if it's they're going to, you're not sure if they're going to graduate, they've got something else they need to turn in, or some last minute thing is happening, you could put pending. Pending stays pending until we change it. So you don't want to use that one unless you're sure that there's going to be an update. Okay, how are we doing? Well, we've answered about 250 questions so far. I think that's a world record. All right, we'll keep going. Let's talk about the California Dream Act application, sometimes referred to as the CADA. That's the acronym. Some people say CADA. That's fine. Say whatever you want. And there's a little important message on here. No human being is illegal. We really don't like it when someone says illegal alien. That's a derogatory term that is not factual or correct or nice. So when we talk about our undocumented students, we want to try to not use that particular language. So let's talk about the California Dream Act application and the legislation around eligibility, which is AB 540 and SB 68. All right, what does the application look like? Well, there's kind of a shot of this, the opening screen when you go into the California Dream Act application. And you might be saying, well, who can apply? Undocumented students can apply with or without DACA. That's really important. DACA has become this political football. It's still going through the courts. We don't know ultimately what's going to happen with DACA. Hopefully they figure that out. But in the interim, what you need to tell your students is, if you have DACA, if you don't have DACA, if you had it before and don't have it now, whatever, DACA has nothing to do with your ability to complete the California Dream Act application or your ability to get state aid. So let's make sure that we separate those two things. If you're TPS or temporary protected status, that means you come from a country that the United States has designated as a TPS country, meaning that it's difficult or impossible for people to return to that country because of civil war, famine, some natural disaster, a whole host of reasons. And if they meet the TPS status, they could apply. Also, U visa holders. Remember that effective with the previous 21-22 academic year, our undocumented students no longer are required to register with Selective Service. So, little caveat to that, the federal government still says, hey, male students 18 to 25, you're still required to register for Selective Service. It's just that they're no longer required to register for financial aid purposes. So if an undocumented student registers or doesn't register, it's not going to impact their financial aid. All right, so the students are going to go to this dream.csac.ca.gov website, and they're going to say, okay, I'm ready to jump in. So AB 540 requirements and SB 68. Oh, by the way, we've had people say, well, we have students who we don't think meet these requirements. Should they still apply? And the answer is anyone can apply. And sometimes at community colleges specifically, but not only community colleges, they will ask students to apply, even if they know they're not going to be Cal Grant eligible. Why? Because they may have another program or institutional aid that can assist the students, and they want that information on file. And they can do that by having the student fill out the Dream Act application. So that's one example of when they would fill it out, even if they know they're not going to be Cal Grant eligible. How do they become Cal Grant eligible? So if they meet certain requirements, the student can get state aid, and they also will qualify for in-state tuition, which is a big deal, right? If you see the difference between in-state tuition and out-of-state tuition, it's a huge difference. So AB 540, we have option A and option B. You don't have to remember all the ins and outs of this. For your students, our students who have been in this country, you know, the average age of most of these students who have come to the United States is 6 years old. That's the average age, if you look at the statistics and the information that's available. That means that the vast majority of these students, you know, have been in elementary school here, have gone through middle school here, and have completed high school here all 4 years. The vast majority. If that's the case, then they're going to qualify. If they have at least 3 years of high school coursework or 3 years in high school, then they're going to qualify. If for any reason they have 3 years of high school coursework, you know, but they haven't physically been at that high school for 3 years, how can that happen? Maybe they took summer school, maybe they took extra classes, maybe they, I don't know. It's not a very common occurrence, but if it happens, they can make up the time difference with elementary school or middle school. Now, SB 68 is a fairly new option for these students. It means that they have a wider parameter of how they can qualify for aid. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the 3 years at a high school. It can be a combination of 3 years of attendance at a high school, an adult school, and a community college. And the community college can be up to 2 years. So it gets a little convoluted, but we want students to know that a lot of them don't even realize that they're eligible at this point. What does this mean? That means that in theory, you don't necessarily have to have gone to a California high school, or maybe you only went for a year and you could still potentially be eligible at some point. So you have to either graduate or get a GED from California. And if you go to a community college and you get an associate's degree, it's going to make you AB 540 eligible. Or if you fulfill the minimum transfer requirements for a UC or a CSU, which is basically graduating from a community college, you're also going to meet those requirements. Okay. Now we have a lot of resources available. If you go to the Dream Act application homepage, you're going to see a link that says resources. And it has a lot of tremendous information on there for you. So it has a training video, It has some FAQs, and it has something that I think is really important. We highly recommend that you print out a paper copy of the CADA application, of the California Dream Act application. Why would you print out a paper copy of that? I'll tell you why. If you're talking to students on the phone or via Zoom, or if you're trying to assist students at a financial aid night or cash for college, if you have this paper copy, it's so easy to flip through and see, you know, the questions that they may have problems with. And then plus you're going to have all the little hints and tips on that second page. So kill a tree, it'll be a little tree, a teeny tiny tree, and print out this so you have access to it. It's just really handy. And the same thing with the FAFSA, honestly. We recommend that you print out and have a paper copy of each. They're really good reference materials for you. So look at the resources for the California Dream Act application. We have lots of them. There's also a Spanish application that is the paper application. You can't apply online in Spanish, but sometimes if the family, if English is limited, or the parents or the grandparents or whoever's helping the student is trying to help them, but their English is limited, if they have that Spanish paper application, it makes it easier maybe to follow along as you're doing the online application. Okay, so check out this information. It's good information. Print out those applications and have a paper copy of each one. So if you're going to start, if a student's going to start an application and they're doing it for the very first time and they've never applied before, they're going to go to start. That's the only time they're going to go to start. High school senior says, oh, I think I fill out the CADA, great. Go to the application, hit start, and that will start that process for you. If you are logging back in, or you are making an update or correcting information or adding a school, or remember, just like the FAFSA, you have to fill out this application every 4 years. So maybe it's from 1 year to the next, you're logging back in. You're going to go to login. So that's the difference, right? Start, first time, never done it before. Log in, you're logging back in. Even if you logged in and created your account 5 minutes ago, you're going to go back to login at that point. So to create your application, you're going to need a user ID, a password, and then you're going to have security questions and answers. Those are always super fun. And then PIN numbers, which will be for the parent signature. So before you do anything else, this, especially if you're having a financial aid event where you're helping students fill out the application, or a cash for college, which everyone should be doing, here's what you need to tell students. Hey, as you start this process, you need to write everything down. Okay, students don't write anything down. You hand them a number 2 pencil and it's like, where's the USB plug-in? Where do I put the battery? What is this thing? So what we recommend is that they create a contact in their phone, and they can say application stuff, Dream Act, Kate, whatever they want to call that contact. And then they can plug in all that information as they go, because they will forget it and they'll need it. So they want to put in the user ID and their passwords, whatever email that they're using, their Dream Act ID, which they'll get at the end of the application process. There's 5 or 6 different things that they need to keep track of. They will not remember all of it. So please, please make sure that you put this information somewhere. If it's a cash for college and mom or dad are there, make them be the note keepers, the gatekeepers, and put that information down. So you have to go through this process. Now, the California Dream Act application doesn't have the equivalent of an FSA ID, but it's just like a lot of other websites. You have to create your account. So you have to create all this information. Make sure you're writing everything down or plugging everything into your phone. That's important. So when you complete the CADA, you do it in sections, as you can see here, and we recommend that you do it in this order. If you see something with a red exclamation point, that means it's not done or it's not complete. The other thing I want you to note on here is up in the upper right-hand side of the application, there's a little thing that says auto hint, and you have the ability to toggle that on. if you toggle that on, or the student does, they're going to get hints for the majority of the questions. In other words, it will have a short explanation of what that question is really asking them to provide. Some students will leave that on for the entire thing. They just find it's easier that way. Others will toggle on and off depending on what question they're looking at. But it's a cool feature. And if a student's having difficulty and they call you, tell them, hey, do you see that little auto hint thing? Toggle that to on, and that you might find that helpful. All right, so they're going to go through here and they're going to put in their information, the student information, the parent information, and then they're going to get to the end where they're going to sign and submit it. Just like the FAFSA, it is critically important that they get their name correct and they get their date of birth correct. And basically, they need to get their demographic information correct. However, on the CADA, what's critical is the name and the date of birth. Why? Because if they mess those up, what? Students mess something up? That never happens. Yeah, it happens sometimes. If they make a mistake, then they can't fix that on their own. They have to fill out a form and submit it to Csac. And it can take a minute for that to get completed and updated. And especially right now, we are incredibly busy. So if you're working with students, tell them you need to put your name here accurately. What is their accurate name? Well, it's probably what is ever on their ID. I mean, in theory, you want it to match what's on the GPA upload, assuming that's correct. So you want to say, put your correct name. But everyone calls me Skippy. No, Skippy. No, you can't. But I love that. No, Skippy, knock it off. Put your correct name. Put your correct first and last name. Make sure your date of birth is right. And then you're not going to have any issues. If you don't do it correctly the first time, everything's fixable. Everything's fixable. But they don't want to go through that process because it just delays the application process and the timing for being awarded. So here are some common issues. It's kind of the usual suspects. So with the California Dream Act, I'm not going to go through all of these, but the name is usually where we have the problems. A lot of students have two last names. And so what can happen is on the GPA upload, maybe it has both. And on the application, maybe they only use one, or vice versa. They list their date of birth incorrectly. You know, I've traveled quite a bit. In some countries, you know, the month and the day gets swapped. And so people are accustomed to doing that. So you want to make sure that people aren't doing that. It's missing a signature. Sometimes what will happen is the student will fill out a FAFSA when in fact they should have filled out a California Dream Act application. And in that case, you need to contact us. We can walk you through that. So there's a whole host of things. And here's some ways to resolve those particular issues. We highly recommend that you connect your students with the local Dreamer Resource Center. It may not be called the Dreamer Resource Center, but all UCs and CSUs and many, many community colleges now have a undocumented student center or Dreamer Resource Center. They might call it something slightly different, but they all do the same thing. They assist undocumented students, and we work with some that are tremendous. You know, we're in Sacramento. Sacramento State does an unbelievable job at the Dreamer Resource Center. Fresno State University and Fresno City College, a tremendous job. UC Davis, tremendous job, and many other schools. And all they do all day is help undocumented students. Your life is going to be made easier if you can connect your students to the Dreamer Resource Center, because that's one more avenue for the student to find help. If you're not working with Immigrants Rising, you should. They have a lot of really good information for working with your undocumented students. They have scholarships for undocumented students, worksheets, materials that you can use. They have this complete sort of electronic binder that's free. You can also order at a low cost, I think the hard copy version of that. The other thing that they have that we like is, remember we were talking about AB 540 and SB 68, and that it can be so convoluted. Well, they have a sheet that you can use to calculate your attendance that can help you determine if you meet the requirements, right? Oh, I went to high school for 2 years, but then I did this, but then I was in a middle school here, but then I did this, and you add all that up together, and it's a it's a form that will allow you to put all that information in one place to see if you're going to meet those requirements. Go on to immigrantsrising.org and get that information. You also, if you want to see where all the undocumented student resource centers are, you can go and look at the link down here at the very bottom. So advising California Dream Act students, the best advice I can tell you is do the application early. Everything should be revolving around October 1st. October 1st, October 1st, October 1st, do your application. Make sure that students are successfully submitting that. They can go into their web grants for students later and see if that's happened. And then the other thing with undocumented students who are filling out the Dream Act application, 20% of those applications are randomly selected for verification. That doesn't mean that anybody did anything wrong. That's just the statute. That's just how it works. So what could happen is that the college could contact that student and say, hey, we need this, we need that, we need something else. When your students are about to go up to college, tell them, if you get an email from the college, please respond quickly. If you don't understand it, make an appointment and go in. Students lose their aid because they don't respond in a timely manner, or they don't provide the information that the schools are asking for. All right, we're going to leave you with some resources. We're in the home stretch. We went fast today, so we just got a few more minutes. Don't go anywhere. It's going to get fun. And we're going to tell you what you get if you fill out a survey. That's exciting. That's worth staying for, right? All right. So let's talk about MoneyThink. MoneyThink is one of the organizations that we're working with. They have a really cool tool. It's an affordability comparison tool called Dcig, and it will help students and their advisors make informed decisions about what school they can go to, what they can afford. They provide a lot of information to students around affordability and graduation and debt. And it's free resources. This is one of the many partners that we're working with who can provide you with resources that can help. MoneyThink has some really good comparison tools, some really good guides. We highly recommend that you check out their website. And if you're not sure, all of these places, you can contact them and say, hey, I'm in a school. I'm in a school district. What can you do? What would you have that will help me help my students? And I guarantee you, they will be enthusiastic to provide you with those materials and those resources. DFPI is a state agency, and they do a lot of different things, but today we want to focus on this. If a student is having an issue with their student loan provider, and they have filed a complaint, or they want to file a complaint, or there's just something going on, especially if it's a private lender, they can contact DFPI and they can ask for help. And that organization, that agency will help them. So they have a lot of really good information. Check out the resources on their website and make sure that you make those accessible to students and their families. CollegeVine is another organization that we're working with. They offer a lot of free tools around determining what school you want to go to. They also have a professional development for school counselors section that you can check out. All their information is free, and students can use it, and they have used it really successfully to talk to someone about what school to go to if they're having difficulties making those kinds of decisions. And there's just a lot of free guidance. They also do a lot of live stream videos talking about coursework or taking the SATs or why GPAs matter. So you want to connect with CollegeVine. The Arthur S. Marmaduke Award. I asked the people at Csac, is it possible, can we please just get a little bit more text on this slide? They said, no, John, we're maxed out. This is it. So slide has a lot of text, but it's good information. The Arthur S. Marmaduke Award is an award to an outstanding high school counselor. And we do this every year. And it's really fun because it recognizes a high school counselor who has done tremendous work and really made a huge difference. And you know what? That's most counselors, actually. But if you want to nominate someone You can use that little link at the bottom, or you can go on our website and look for the Marmaduke Award information. And this is open now, so you have the ability to nominate someone and fill out that information. And if they win, they get $1,500 in a plaque. But more importantly, we show up at their school or their school district, and we make a big deal out of it. We have a little ceremony, and we recognize the work that that person has done. So take a minute, check out that information on our website. The Northern California Promise Coalition. Oops, sorry. Oh my goodness, sorry, my mouse just went crazy. So the Northern California College Promise Coalition offers a lot of resources as well, and primarily in Northern California, but they have resources that would be interesting to everybody. And they literally have helped tens of thousands of students. They are connected with many, many, many service organizations all around the Bay Area in this case. And so they are able to offer you information and resources to help your students. They network, they have student advocates that can assist, they connect students to the workforce. They work with students who otherwise would not be able to go to college because they're low income, or they don't have access, or they don't have the information. So they do a lot of different things. So they are really big players in the education community in Northern California. They have good stuff on their website and really good resources. So please take a look. When We All Vote is a nonpartisan initiative that's trying to motivate and excite young people to register to vote and to vote. It's a really good organization. We think it's important that young people get involved. Your vote is your voice, and you want to make sure that students realize that they play an important role in our democracy. So you may want to reference this site or make it available to your students. Let's go to College California. So this is put on by the California Community Colleges, and it's a tremendous amount of information that's on there. There's 116 community colleges. You can find information about all of them. There are online courses, how to apply, financial aid. If you need mental health, there's a mental health directory for each one of these. So you want to take advantage of that and check out this information. FastWeb. There are lots of sites that offer information about scholarships. FastWeb offers a lot of information about scholarships for students. There are other sites, obviously, but we're recommending FastWeb. They also have toolkits for educators, and they will send you printed materials if you go online and request them. So check them out. They offer this free program, and they will send you free materials and updates about new programs and new scholarships and new sources of money for students. Take a look at that. We know you don't get enough emails, and we're here to help. So if you're not signed up for the emails from the California Student Aid Commission, please sign up. And you can do that by going to our homepage. There's a link at the very bottom of the page. You can see that there where it says subscribe to Csac Important Updates. And you can kind of pick and choose. You could say, I'm a high school and I'm interested in this and this and this. And you will get those updates. It has updates about trainings. It has updates about new programs. It has updates about things that are happening with web grants and web grants access. It has updates about programs for undocumented students. So if you haven't signed up, please do so. You're going to receive those operation memos and those special alerts that are important. So we sent this out. Hopefully everyone got it. We apologize. The links that we have create a lot of bounce backs. So if you didn't get everything, you see the email down there at the bottom, email us and say, hey, I didn't get that. And we will do our best to get it to you. We'll also have this recording online very soon if you want to rewatch any portion of this presentation that we're doing today. And we will also have the PDF versions of both the FAFSA and the Csac presentations on there. As soon as we get done with the accessibility check that we're doing as we speak, So very soon those will get posted. We'll send out an email via listserv when that happens, so you'll have it. This link that we sent out, every single website or organization that we talked about is on this spreadsheet. And it's in order of how we went through the PowerPoint today. So it's going to say slide number 1, you know, and what it was, and it'll have that link. So everything we talked about today, you're going to be able to find with that little spreadsheet that we sent you. If you didn't get that, contact us and we will be sure to get you a copy. The CalSOAP program is really important. It is run through Csac, and there are a number of consortiums throughout the state of California. They do really tremendous work with projects helping students and schools, especially low-income, first-generation students. If you want information about CalSOAP or CalSOAP in your area, please check out the link on our website. They have their own separate website, and you'll have information available there. Like we said previously, we do a lot of different kinds of outreach and training, weekly live webinars, which some of you have done, annual statewide financial aid workshop. You figured that out because you're here. Excuse me. YouTube videos, ad hoc training requests. If we have the ability to come out and present at your Cash for College or your financial aid night, or to do a Zoom with all your parents, we're happy to do that if we're able. So just contact us. We'll send you a training request form and we can see if we can make that happen. Cash for College workshops, we have information on this link. Train the Trainer workshops are workshops specifically for people who are going to do Cash for College or similar events, and they need more information to better assist their students. So it kind of goes through all the programs. So that's interesting if you're going to be doing a Cash for College for the first time. Speaking of Cash for College, we want to make sure that everyone's signing up to do these events. Everyone should be doing a Cash for College, at least in your district, so you can steer students and their families to these events. This is the most tangible thing that you can do to ensure that students are filling out an application and it's being successfully submitted, because they're going to walk in with their families. Someone's going to sit down with them and they're going to say, okay, let's open this thing up and let's get going. And they will assist them in that process. So there are subject matter experts who can attend. Sometimes, you know, people can be there who speak different languages. Just check out the website, contact us if you have any questions, and we're happy to assist. Check out our social media. Now, 5 or 6 years ago, I would say, our social media is not that great, because frankly, it wasn't. Now it's good. And we have people who are dedicated to our social media all the time. So you can check out the different social media. We are the cool kids on the block because we have everything now. Check that out. See what's going on. Make sure you're getting the updates from us. Use that QR code. And if you want any additional information about that, you know, feel free to contact us. So sometime soon, actually it might be today or tomorrow, you're going to get a survey via email that we're hoping you can fill out. We want you to fill out that survey because this is how we make the vast majority of changes to our presentations. So we really value your feedback. If you'll fill that out for us, we will send you this beautiful certificate that you can print out, the certificate of completion, and you can hang it on your cubicle wall and be the envy of everyone in the entire school. So get the survey. The survey literally takes 3 or 4 minutes to fill out. It's very, very short. Add your comments, and then we'll send you this form. Normally that takes a week, 10 days approximately, because we wait for people to fill out as many of the surveys as possible. But we'll get it to you. If for some reason you don't get that, contact us and we'll make sure you get it. If you want to connect with us, you can give students the student support number and email. School support or institutional support unit is the middle one there. And if you want to reach us, the people who have put on this presentation today, or you want to talk about ad hoc trainings, etc., you can contact the training outreach unit at that email below. So here's the emails that you need. Remember, we also have our social media. So feel free to contact us using that information. Like I said, if we weren't able to answer your questions, if you didn't get the PDF that you wanted, if you, whatever it is, contact us at Outreach and Training, and we will be sure to get back to you and provide you that information. We did it. That's it. We're done. It's amazing. So I want to thank you all for being on today. We appreciate your patience. We had hundreds and hundreds of people on this particular event. So we did the best we could do with the limited people we had answering the questions. But we did a lot. We're getting close to 300. If you need additional information, contact us, like I said, at the Outreach and Training email, which you see on the bottom of the page here. If you want more information about our programs, you can go to our Csac website. Thank you again. And we're just going to hang for a minute and make sure we answer these questions. Christina, if you didn't get we will be sending out the spreadsheets, excuse me, the PDFs again, if you didn't get that, but definitely email us and we'll get you one out right away. For those of you who are going to in-person events, yes, we do have little printed workbooks for you. An abridged version that's a little bit smaller than what we normally do. But yeah, if you do come to an in-person event, we do have those. So thank you guys so much. We appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out. We know it's a ton of information, and we hope that you got some value out of today's presentation. So contact us if you need additional assistance, and we'll see you next time. Remember, you can still go to an in-person event if you'd like to.